All right, grab a seat. We're just about to do announcements. That would be great. We got money to give away. If you don't hear your name, I get to keep it. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice lunch. We are going to do Hollington 14 this afternoon. I have one very important public service announcement. If you are just get everyone's attention for 1 minute, and we'll get in the games. Tomorrow, when you come to the playroom, if you are leaving the hotel tomorrow, you want to come to check in because there are no breaks in the train schedule for morning because from game to game to game. Also tomorrow, if you are sticking around with us for the rest of the day tomorrow, or next day, you will be doing a walking tour on Sunday. The details for that are going to be in the daily briefing that comes in tonight. There'll be a meeting. Basically what will happen is we're going to wrap the award ceremony by about 2:15. You don't have a chance to grab lunch. We'll be in Old Montreal at 4 o'clock, and we will give you those location details. Now, here comes the fun part. We got $50 bills to give away. We were playing for low win this morning. Here it is about to come around and dance. Here we go. Here are the winners. In Division C, Cynthia Scotty, one with a, it's really the other way. We should go high to low. But I know Cynthia, give a big round of applause. 326. First round. Congratulations. Here we go. And then in A and B, we got to the same number. So we're going to do both at the same time. 344 for Eric Goldstein in A and Ben Crees in B. That's $50 base. And in Collins, the low win, still pretty high for the rest of us non-balls. 379 to Toby over there for $50. And this afternoon, we have 4 more 50s on the line. We are playing the biggest upset, so that is the biggest difference in the rating. So if you are at the lower end of the rating, you're trying to knock people off up. That's how you're going to get it. Okay, and with that, we are ready to go. So I am going to, we're going to kick things off. Will you kick us off? Let's play Scrabble. All right, thanks everybody.
Pardon me? You are not on audio, but I may take you for an interview at the end. You guys can beg, but do not start. I need to give these guys a minute, probably more like 3 minutes.
All right. I'm still hearing that beautiful bop right now. Okay, there we
There we
go.
go. Let's put it away.
So yeah, we're back. Lunch break is over, and it's going to be the afternoon session for day 2 at Montreal Scrabblefest, brought to you by Let's Play Scrabble and WGPO. We had amazing games this morning, but we are headed back into the North American Lexicon division. And for all the action this afternoon, I am joined by none other than Mack Meller. Mack, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you so much, and great to be here. Thanks so much to Will as well as Josh and the Let's Play Scrabble team for having me on. And yeah, really excited for this session. Should be a lot of fun games. So let's see, who do we have up first?
Yeah, I think we're very likely to have our players ready, and I think the matchup that we are going to have in round 8 is Emmett Brosowsky versus Seth Lipkin, 2 veteran players. If you've watched Scrabble streams before, you are no doubt familiar with these two. Certainly, if you are a tournament Scrabble player yourself, Seth Lipkin needing very little introduction, not only the creator of our extremely useful tournament website Cross Tables, but also the Ulu word lookup app for your phone. We're using that as your timer in the game for the players as well. And of course, Annette, a more recent entrant into the Scrabble scene, but Mac, she has made huge waves in just a couple years.
Absolutely, and I remember she was always watching your Twitch streams, Josh's, and my videos. Her handle, I believe, is Churro with a varying number of R's on each of the different platforms. And yeah, she was always really engaged. And she has, like you said, Will, really risen in the ranks very quickly the last year or two. So it's been awesome to see. And yeah, this should be a really exciting game. So can't wait to see how it goes.
Yeah, players are putting those tiles in the bag. It's going to be Annette going first. I do feel, Mac, like there is a slight contrast in styles here. Seth is absolutely so strong with his word knowledge. Annette, we mentioned it, still a more recent convert into Scrabble. Her word knowledge is plenty good, but I really feel where she shines is her strategic grasp of the game.
Yeah, that is a fair assessment, I would say. Obviously, neither of these players have any glaring weaknesses. Like you said, they're both really strong. But yeah, Seth, I've known Seth for about probably over 10 years, honestly, at this point, and his word knowledge was definitely what always stood out to me as his biggest strength. So certainly he knows the vast majority, if not all of the words. I've seen him play very impressive, obscure, low probability 7s and 8s. So yeah, it's going to be a fun battle, and I guess we're just waiting to see what Annette. I don't see her tiles on her rack yet.
Yeah, it looks like her clock ran. Maybe she drew something.
Maybe she traded quickly or something.
Yeah, it could be an exchange. It also is possible, knowing how the broadcasting software works, it might need to be, we might need to see the racks refreshed. Okay, so we don't necessarily know exactly what happened on that first rack, except that it was an exchange. Clearly, there are no words on the board. So Annette exchanged something, and now it's back over to Seth, and kind of a weird set of tiles for him, Mac.
Indeed, yeah, and I see he has Snarf lined up. It's not a bad play. I wonder maybe Raff I would have preferred a little bit just to hold on to the S. Snarf does get 4 more points, but Raff would have set up the S hook in the double line a little bit more effectively.
Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, normally you like to see a few more points be added to your score in order to use up that S to open the game. So I'm definitely agreeing with you. Maybe something like 8 or something in that range of points. But boy, it looks like he's managed to draw fruition to the N of Snarf, which is going to cover up any issues that his previous play had, as you say, if it stays open.
Which, as of right now, I'm guessing Annette is lining up Gazer. That looks considerably better than Gaze and S, which seems like a pretty good play. It's worth mentioning he's one off of Stargaze for 110, I believe, which would be pretty awesome, but not quite there.
Yeah, that would be an incredible opening to the game to play something like that. But this looks like a pretty reasonable play from her POV. Something like Gazer or Graze in that same spot. Of course, Gazer is a little more defensive with grays through that same spot, taking so many hooks. And of course, we see fruition instantly. If you see this word, Mac, there's no way it's not going to be the right play.
Yeah, no, with FIIU on your rack, which are otherwise pretty clunky tiles, if you have a bingo, this is exactly the right way to play this for Seth. It's not worth spending more than a couple of seconds. It's pretty clear there's going to be no other bingo and no reason to think about any plays other than a bingo. So yeah, it's important to manage your time early in the game. So definitely the right play by Seth there, not thinking any more than he has to.
Yeah, and that F in the triple lane, it normally you would expect that to, and it looks like Hefe lined up on Annette's rack, maybe getting ready to play through that F. That's certainly going to occupy her attention. There's really no better place to grab easy points right here through that F on the triple. Hefe looks great. It does leave 4 consonants, so she will be a little bit vulnerable to more consonant draws here, but I definitely like the play here, Mac. Is there any merit to je through the U of fruition, leaving that open and maybe maximizing your bingo leave?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I mean, obviously, I don't love keeping the 4 consonants. It's a pretty hefty point sacrifice, though. Hefe is 42, je would be 26. You're giving up 16 points. ERNT is obviously a great leave. That being said, it's already not feeling like a great board for bingoing. That leave is a little consonant heavy for working with the F. She doesn't have an S for snarfs. So I agree with taking the points. It's worth mentioning a line will want to, well, not anymore, but I was going to say a line we want to keep in mind is potential 9s through the ING, making ING, but Seth has now blocked that, so that will be irrelevant.
Oh, yeah. Prior to civil, you could potentially see it's like cortexing. Yeah, that's not a word, but that something like that would be incredibly stylish. Yeah. Seth making, I think, clearly, no debate, that's his best play with kind of a clunky rack, getting rid of his V, his multiple eyes. That's definitely the right play for him here. And I do agree with you for the record. That's true. Yeah, they're both players are playing fast. But I totally agree with your analysis of Hefe. By the way, it's a lot of extra points. Not only are you getting 16 more points for playing Hefe, you're probably also reducing Seth's score by a fair margin most of the time, playing through that F at the top of the board. So you come out even better than that in the exchange. So agreed. And now what's Annette got here? She can't play cortexing, which is a good thing because that's not a word. But what will she look to do?
See, she can almost play a 10 of contextual through the T and the AL if her R were a U, but almost does not cut it in Scrabble. She could play context if she just wants to burn through a bunch of tiles and score a decent number of points. I don't hate it. She's down a bit. She's not down a ton, so burning through a bunch of tiles, there's still 2 blanks and 3 S's unseen, all of which she would, of course, love to get. I don't see any particularly good scoring play. She can't really overlap with the X next to the I in fruition. She needs an I or a U to play down. So I don't see anything much better. What do you think, Will?
Yeah, she's going to go ahead and play 4X. I feel like that's right up there with other plays. I kind of initially liked the idea of context at a deficit, just making it possible. Maybe on your next turn, you play through the C, and now the board has just a ton of different options all over the place. But 4X does some similar things. I just worry that Seth might be able to overlap this X, score well, and kind of close things down in a way that, you know, the board after an overlapping play, the right play that doesn't hook, could leave things quite closed after this play, even though for now it looks so nice with that big open E. Seth's going to try to play in that spot. So either way, there was a lot going on there. I'm not sure if there was a major standout play there, but my gut tells me that I kind of liked context there for the reasons.
Yeah, honestly, for me, was the biggest reason I preferred that over 4X, and it's being borne out now by we see Annette only having 1 vowel on her rack. The leave of CTN that she kept is not bad, but it's a little consonant heavy, and context kept only an R and just reduced the chances of something like this happening. So I think that was another reason. And like you said, too, of course, the E is nice, but it's a juicy spot for Seth for scoring or potentially even bingoing himself. And it'll be interesting to see how, if at all, he wants to address it, because he's got a very clunky rack on his hands with the Q and also a slew of other consonants. So he could obviously just drop the Q for 21, but he might want to try to block the opening she created and also maybe hope to draw an I for QI for 44 next turn.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and play Bolt, which this is an aggressive option. Obviously, setting up that really nice big S hook here, which he does not have. And that's with a lead, too. So he's kind of creating a situation where Annette, if she had just the right letters, could sort of instantly equalize, the game score. But in a vacuum, it does a lot of nice things. It scores well. It uses up that scoring spot before Annette can do so herself. And as you said, Mac, he could draw an I and greatly increase the power of the spot. Yeah. An A, which will allow him to play cat. So he's drawn both of those letters, and he is going to reap the benefits of his choice. So I do like it. It feels weird to be so aggressive when you are already winning in the game and maybe you want to switch over to a defensive mindset. But I actually think his aggression is warranted here, given the options available.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. Especially the Q is sort of a weird tile because normally you want to get rid of it as soon as possible. But with that spot open, and it's not that likely, I don't think, that Annette is going to play there in that part of the board, the potential for him to easily, like we saw with either an A or an I draw, which is pretty lucky or likely with him pulling 4 tiles, just the potential for getting an easy 45-point play. I do agree it's counterintuitive, but I think given his lack of any other better options, it's the right play.
Yeah, it's cool. It's always cool when you see any kind of, and that's the way in Scrabble, right? We have these rules. When you're winning in the game, don't make a big S hook for your opponent, or, do this. Don't keep 3 eyes on your rack, right? All these different rules that we have, but all of those rules can be broken if you are given the right circumstance, right? So this is a classic example of a play that feels very counterintuitive to our normal rules of how we process Scrabble positions, but it makes a lot of sense when you actually put it all together. And Annette playing damn. I wonder if this is a self-descriptive word, not having an S. She's saying damn, but it's actually a nice play to keep her lone vowel, Mac.
Yeah, for sure. CERT, a really good leave. And it's worth mentioning that the C, I feel like, is a very misunderstood tile in Scrabble. A lot of players don't like it because there are no 2 other words with a C, which makes it hard to overlap. But it's actually a really good bingo tile, especially if you've studied a good amount of bingos, which Annette, of course, has at this point. So I really like that play as well. And Seth, of course, dropping the Q for his 47-point play, I believe. A pretty clear play for him, I think.
Yeah, that's when the plan comes together. He drew exactly what he needed to hit that spot. Interesting that he actually had the choice of plays there between Cat and Chi. So Cat also scoring a few extra points. And also there's really no need to keep the A or the T along with his leave of, K, H, O, some combination of those letters. The T doesn't really do much to improve that in any appreciable sense. So you might as well spend it and get a few extra points. And he does exactly that. Definitely like that for him. And Crew the play for Annette now.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad play. I was wondering about wipe through the I in civil for 18. It's extremely aggressive, setting up the R hook, and there are 3 Ds and 2 S's unseen. But if Seth doesn't have any of those, it's very annoying to block. And there aren't a ton of words with a D or an S in the second spot. So it's not that dangerous, I don't think. And Annette is starting to be in pretty bad shape in this game. She's down 82 points on a board where the whole left side of the board is pretty much cut off here. It's starting to feel, I wouldn't say like a desperate situation, but a situation with a little more urgency, especially after Seth's Q-bomb. So I'm not saying I would have done it. I would have at least considered it, though.
Yeah, it could be the sort of aggression that is warranted at this game score. The nice extra thing about wipe is that you're getting rid of the P and the W, and you're keeping CR together on the rack instead of using that R. So Annette's leave after that would have been CERT. And if you do draw a play with wiper, there's a really good chance that you'll be able to start with CR or TR going across the triple. Even if you don't bingo, you're likely to score pretty well. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely.
Look at is lined up on her rack. Oh my gosh. What a find.
Wow. What is she even?
Putting AT, petticoat, as a 9.
Holy
On
crap.
row 5. That's incredible.
This is going to be one of the better plays
That's
I've
gonna start
ever
over. There's
seen
no
on a
way he's
live
blocking.
stream.
Oh my
That is
god. That's sick.
astounding. She sees it. That you see how it's lined up. This is an absolute gorgeous find. This is really one of the top that I've ever seen played on stream, Mac.
Wow.
Petticoat to AT.
3
Kudos to
Ts.
you for noting it. I was totally in the dark until you threw that out as a
Yeah, I
possibility.
didn't want to interrupt you since you were making some very good points about the last play, but at some point it was too exciting. That is an amazing play. 76 points and 76,000 style points. 78 points, excuse me. I can't do math today.
Absolutely phenomenal. That is really impressive. Just for anybody watching along, 9-letter words are rare enough. Almost always when you see them, they are inflections of 7 and 8-letter words, a plural of an 8-letter word, an ED form of a 7-letter word, a verb form. You rarely see words like this, which are sort of a true 9-letter word. And clearly, that is just natural anagramming ability from Annette Oberstad here. I cannot imagine she has studied that word formally, and I'm incredibly impressed, Mac.
Yeah, likewise. That is not an easy find for anybody, regardless of your level and general vocabulary, how much you've studied. I mean, I probably have studied it at some point, to be honest, but I mean, that would be a very, very difficult find even for me. I mean, also an AT is just not a natural spot to look for a 9. If you see an ED or an ES or an RE, then you're sort of more naturally inclined to look for 9s there, but there are not a lot of words that end in AT. So, and she found it quickly too. I mean, just the fact that she even thought to look there, even if she knows the word, is absolutely incredible. So what a play to also blow open the board and keep herself in the game. And Seth has not drawn well after his play of Shook. So things are going to get very interesting here because I don't really see any great options for him to address the P and all of the openings that Annette's 9-letter bingo has created.
Yeah, just, I mean, to underscore how absolutely critical it was to Annette's winning chances to find that play, which I very, very much doubt very many players would do. I really feel like her chances are not that bad after that play, whereas any other play than Petticoat, she was probably in that sort of sub 5%, 2, 3, 4% win. She's probably up to at least 20 or 25% in something in that range after Petticoat. So a huge difference maker in the game, in addition to being just one of the flashier, I can't say it enough, plays I've seen in quite a while. So it looks like Seth is agonizing a little bit, Mac, but maybe he's getting ready to play IE through Petticoat. Annette already played damn earlier in the game in a response to her consonant heavy rack. Maybe Seth's going to play IE in response to his vowel heavy rack.
Yeah, it looks like a reasonable play to me. It's a little counterintuitive to look to play through a vowel when your problem is having too many vowels. So a good spot by Seth there. I will say not the easiest word to see under those circumstances, but I'm just not really seeing anything through the P, and this does at least block a little bit. So I think it's a good play. And I do want to point out funny comment in the chat by none other than Joey Malik. She says that's why she played crew instead of wipe on the last turn because it's the P for Petticoat. So can't argue with that.
How could we be so thoughtless as to not realize that? I don't know, but it's something that I'll be thinking about. Clearly, Crew was right to set up the Petticoat possibility. But yeah, Scrabble is sort of just kind of mayhem, trying to work out all the different permutations of what can happen after one move or another. It's hard to even say what the chances are of drawing a 9-letter word, an AT word there, probably astronomically small. But yeah, that was just astounding on her part. And let's see if karmically, did she earn some? I mean, there really is no karma in Scrabble, Mac, but if ever there was a deserving recipient of Scrabble karma, it would be Annette after Petticoat here.
That is for sure. And her rack is not bad. She does have the S, which is good. Unfortunately, she's just a little bit shy on vowels, which is something we've seen a lot this game, really up until Seth's last rack. And his next rack is actually looking awfully similar to his last rack. But yeah, here, I mean, the most obvious thing I see is just Bah, BAH in the top left corner, which scores pretty well. It does keep 4 consonants, which is not great. That being said, LNGS, especially if she can pull an I out of the bag, isn't terrible. And the pool is fairly vowel heavy. It's 18 vowels, 18 consonants right now, which at first sounds even, but it's actually vowel heavy because it starts consonant heavy. The pool starts 42 vowels, 56 consonants, and 2 blanks. So anything that's closer to even is actually a little bit vowel heavy. I don't know. Do you see anything, Will, that gets rid of some more consonants and scores pretty well?
No, I would say that if you want to go all out for the ing possibility, you could play something like blahs right here, making snarfs. That draws you a few more tiles, which could be valuable with both blanks here. You would be giving up your S for a pretty negligible point gain over something like Ba, but maybe that's okay given the blanks that are coming. I would say to your point of GLNS after this play of Ba, if she does draw a bingo through this I, it is actually going to fit with INGS. It'll just barely still fit on the board, but anything ending in ING will not quite fit. So anyway, she's going to go ahead and play Pang. This is a little bit of a point sacrifice. Maybe she's thinking that she wants to start getting a little bit more action going in this quadrant. Problem is the G is going to be very difficult to overlap for that purpose.
Yeah, the SH combo is certainly good together. The B, I don't love. I actually like your play of Blaz there, Will. That's probably what I would have gone with if I had seen it, because you do get rid of the S, like you said, but I do agree that turnover is really important, and there just aren't really any S hooks on this board right now that you could use to bingo, so the S is not that valuable a tile, I don't think. So, yeah, interesting decision here, and yeah, for Seth, I don't see any 8s other than Epimnesia with a P or an M, which does not play on this board.
Yeah, with Seth, knowing Seth, he would probably see that if he had the relevant letters. But as you say, none of those are available. So he's going to have to improvise and come up with something else. Maybe he's going to try to just play YA right here. That would score okay. The problem is it leaves him with 2 I next turn. So he's opted for Icy instead. That keeps a much more flexible leave. But Mac, if he draws 2 vowels, that could be the break a net needs to kind of stay in this game, even though Seth's got a good size lead right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, despite, and it's a little unfortunate if you're a net, that despite her brilliance earlier, it's definitely still advantage Seth, given the state of his rack and also the state of Annette's rack. Obviously, of course, we have sort of this privileged viewpoint as the commentators. The players do not know what each other are holding. But yeah, if you're a net here, so you're still struggling with consonants, you're down a bit. This is not a huge deficit. You're still looking at those 2 blanks left. First thing I see is something like glib, maybe through the I in petticoat, making LI and bi. It keeps EPHS, which is a nice leave because it's pretty good for bingoing and also scoring. And if you do hit a bingo, then it's going to score a lot of points. There might be something better, but that's the first thing I see.
Yeah, it's reasonable. And we've been talking about the fact that the bag is pretty vowel. It's not like incredibly vowel heavy, but it's got enough vowels in there where you could play glib, or maybe if you think the L improves your leave enough and maybe you're going to draw 2 vowels out of the bag, you could just play gib in the same spot and keep an extra good bingo tile. Normally, you very likely want to get rid of that extra L to keep better balance on your leave. Instead, she's going to go across the board and get the most points that she can get by playing peg. It also sets up a new spot for her S. I think there are some things to like about this play. Of course, giving up that E she is going to want to, not that you have any control over this, but she'd love to try to draw another E from the bag, Mac.
Yeah, for sure. And I like this idea because after glib or gib, you're sort of banking on probably hitting an 8 from the W in the top right, or maybe from the S and Snarf. As we were saying before, there really aren't any lines for sevens. So creating that is good. And like you said, scoring some more points. Unfortunately for her, Seth has probably about 100 different bingos available on this rack. His best one that I see, and has also been pointed out by Kevin and Robin in the chat, is War Times from the W, which would score 89 points and take a pretty commanding lead.
Yeah, and Seth is very likely to find that. If he doesn't find that, he's got a couple other options, as you said. I don't know if it's 100, it's something close to that. Plenty of things down from this S as well that hit a triple. But make no mistake, War Times would be a better option than anything down from this S, because there's a ton of space that this would open up to a net. Right now, this whole quadrant of the board is very difficult to access. So playing something like Smarties would really open all that back up. War Times opens none of that back up, and it scores a bunch more points than you can get anywhere else. So that is what we want to see from Seth, and obviously he is about to play it right now.
Yep, and credit to Seth there. I saw he had Seamiest from the S lined up first, but he recognized that he has a lot of time on his clock. He has 13 minutes left. We're getting towards the last third or fourth of the game, and bingoing there, like you said, it's better for many reasons. It scores more points, it doesn't open anything up, and it also closes that entire part of the board, right? It closes the W, and it also closes the line that Annette just created next to Op on her last turn. So yeah, very good awareness of the whole situation there by Seth, and of course, great word finding as well, which we totally expect. Seth's word knowledge, as we were saying earlier, is very, very strong. So no surprise there, and now we'll see what Annette can do to try to give herself a chance to make a comeback here.
Yeah, I think a lot depends on whether Seth picks that blank out of the bag. There still is a little bit of time for Annette to make a move that scores well, maybe draw a really high-scoring bingo somewhere. As you suggest, though, the board is not, flush with space to play high-scoring bingos. You really are pinning a lot of hopes if you're Annette right now on this S, trying to draw a bingo that starts with S. Maybe that in some sense, it looks like she has house lined up on her rack, which would be kind of a nice spot to play it right here going across. It's going to score a ton of points, surprisingly many points in that spot. And while Annette would love to keep her S and, maximize her chance of bingoing, she also really, really needs points on the scoreboard before she can even think about her resulting bingo actually mattering in the game. So I do like this option for her quite a bit. What are your thoughts, Mac?
Completely agree. Yeah, I think she's down 112 and time is running out. There's only 21 tiles in the bag. By the time there are fewer than 7 in the bag, she wouldn't even possibly be able to bingo twice. So she wants to do everything in her power to give herself at least a chance to come back with one bingo. And the thing is, either way, she's going to need to get lucky, right? When you're down 100 points, you have to almost play as if you're going to get lucky, because you're going to lose if you don't anyway. So keeping BL is not great, but sort of banking on drawing the blank. And it's worth mentioning, Seth can now basically end the game on the spot with Inundate.
Yeah, Inundate through this T. So I think he started one too far. He'll figure it out. Yeah, I was looking at this T and lamenting for him that he didn't have it. We are going to see him play through the other T. So pretty much spot on word finding from Seth all game long. Fruition, War Times, pretty much the only play that I could look at and say maybe I would have done something different is that opening play of Snarf. I probably would have played Raff, but otherwise it's been an absolute clinic from Seth in the game.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, and someone has pointed out in chat too, it's, I guess, a little bit of an unfortunate thing. Often incredibly cool plays like we saw with Petticoat tend to happen in losses, and it seems, barring something extremely improbable here, even though she has drawn the blank, and that will be losing this game, but she certainly stole the show with that incredible find earlier, and I wonder if she has a playable bingo here.
Yeah, so it seems like she does have one playable bingo here. It's not the easiest one to spot. It is in the spot that you would expect. When I tell you there's one playable bingo, you're probably looking at that second T of Petticoat, but this is not a normal word to find. And ultimately, the score of the game is such that she's in trouble regardless. So no karmic justice for the incredible play of Petticoat. That is how it goes. what can you say? Ultimately, for plays like that, sometimes that's what's remembered more about these particular games as opposed to the individual outcome. That's no slight to Seth, who's played amazingly well, but Petticoat is in that next level of plays that you just do not see very often.
Yeah, for sure. It's been pointed out. I guess the only available bingo is a word that is new in the American dictionary, nutballs.
Oh yeah, that's right. I wasn't even thinking about that. Yeah, so I hesitate to even try to define that word. We had some funny words this morning on the broadcast. Maybe this is like a food item or something like that, but also it's a word that Twitch chat, YouTube chat, any chats on the internet should have a field day with that. Just be respectful out there. She has found it. Wow.
Or
She had it. She had it lined up. Yeah. See, she has NUBALL in the blank. So I wonder. This would be just, again, she's not going to win the game if she finds this, but it would be so impressive to see her, put that down. But who knows? Maybe there's some. I don't know. Like you said, Mac. I mean, it's a new word. I personally don't know the new words very well yet, and it's harder to cement them after a smaller period of time. Would you be confident to find this word here?
I think I would find it. I'm not going to lie. I don't think I would have been sure of it, especially because netballs is good, and that was also added, I believe, in the previous update to this one. So it's just very confusing sometimes to keep track of that. And I'm guessing that's what's happening with Annette here, or I guess either one of two things, because she definitely had it lined up. Either she's unsure of it, which would be completely understandable, like we said, especially with it being a new word, or probably more likely she might still be looking for a better bingo on the bottom under inundate. If she could get to that triple, like almost say bullpen would come close to working, but she has an A. It turns out there's nothing there, but she, of course, doesn't have the luxury of using an anagrammer during the game like we do. So totally get if she wants to spend more time trying to find something there.
Yeah, bullpen at least would play on top of inundate, I guess. But yeah, that's. But either way, tricky situation for her. The only thing we know for sure is that it's purely academic. Want to see if she can cut that deficit as much as possible. You can see Seth's record 5-1-1, which is interesting because. Normally, that second number after the record is what we use as a tiebreaker. But because Seth tied a game earlier in this tournament, his record is such that he's really only going to need that tiebreaker against other players with not only a tie, but also the same number of wins that he has. So he has such a nice cumulative margin of victory, and it doesn't really do a lot for him in the standings of the tournament. So we'll see if that changes.
I was thinking too, another circumstance in which it could matter, an unlikely circumstance, is if Seth ties again. It's not unheard of that somebody could end up tying twice in the same tournament, and 2 ties is, of course, equivalent to 1 win and 1 loss. So if Seth were to tie again, then he sort of comes back with the rest of the folks in the division who don't have a tie, and that could actually start to matter again. So he should still be thinking about spread. Now, the tie does allow him to, and it's not going to be relevant in this game, but have a little bit more liberty, I would say, with, if he's down a lot, he should probably just be more aggressive and not worry about cutting spread. But he should still not completely throw it out the window because you never know. It could still matter.
Yeah, totally true. I would say in my entire career, I think I've tied like 10 games or something out of not many thousands, but at least over 1,000 tournament games. So it's certainly not mathematically impossible, but also quite unlikely. But I've seen it happen. I'm sure you have too, where players have tied multiple games in the same tournament. So anyway,
once somebody tied 3 games in a 7-game tournament. I don't remember who or where, and maybe somebody in the chat knows, but I'm almost positive that it happened once, which is absolutely mind-blowing.
That is incredible. 3 out of 7 is
3 out of 7.
Not very likely. So, well, I thought she had so nutballs apparently just meaning an odd person, like a nut, like a nutter, which makes sense. That seems reasonable. I felt like she had it on a range there, ready to play through the T, but maybe she didn't realize that actually is a valid word. So I think At one point, she had her B on the rack there set up where I think she might be getting ready to throw in the towel and play bun. I thought perhaps she was going to play bun here. I mean, that doesn't feel right because you do give up your chance of bingoing with the blank. So I'm pretty sure she'll play something else. But maybe if she throws in the towel on her quest for a bingo, she would play in that spot just to deny Seth the ability of doing so himself.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because for her, obviously, we're just talking about how Seth has the tie, but she does not have a tie, so spread is definitely a big consideration. And she doesn't have a great rack for bingoing, and if she empties the bag, Seth is also going to probably block unless she were to draw one in two spots. And with a W and a V still unseen, there's a lot of threats like Wand or Ven down there from her perspective that I think if she, I'm guessing at this point she's probably unsure of nutballs. If she isn't sure of it and elects to not play it, then I don't think it's unreasonable.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was also just wondering, she might be looking to see, is there any point in blocking this T? Is there any bingo that Seth might have that I should play something like blunt here? I don't see a word like that. So ultimately, she does go ahead and play bun. There are two tiles in the bag, so this is going to give up her chance of bingoing, but I think that's kind of a calculated decision on her part, knowing that even if she were to go for a bingo, she wasn't super likely to actually get one down on this board anyway, especially after Seth's next play. He's very likely to block after a small fishing play by a net. So back to Seth now, and it's basically up to him to figure out what's probably a pretty tricky end game in a vacuum, just because a net has the blank. It's difficult to figure out all the things that your opponent can do when they have that blank tile in the end game. But in practice, it's not going to be that hard to figure out because this is the best scoring spot on this board by far. So Seth just needs to play something down in that spot that allows him to go out on his next turn. And I think or either that, or maybe a net has. Is there any way to stop her ovally? Maybe that's
It's alveoli and inundate, which that play would block.
Oh, okay. So maybe ovally and alveoli are two outplays where it doesn't matter to Seth if he can go out next turn. And there it looks like a net spotted it too.
God, I would play dog though, probably D-A-W-E-D. It still allows ovally, but Weird would allow all over to the R for a bit more points. So if you're going to concede that a net goes out, I think just taking the extra points with Dodd is a little bit better. But I do still wonder if there's a way for Seth to completely stop her from going out. It might be tough.
Yeah, so weighted or Dodd appear to be very similar. As you say, Mac, this gives a pretty nice outplay to the R. It does block. You can see from the way, sorry about that, the way Annette has set up her tiles that she saw alveoli to this I, which I guess after this game, I think I have to forfeit the right to be surprised by anything that she finds, because she's found some stuff that very, very few other players would do. But spotting alveoli, no easy feat there. She did it. She's going to have to come up with another choice here. But Seth's going to win this game, but I really am coming away very impressed by both players.
Yeah, 100%. This was some really, really high-quality Scrabble from both of them. And yeah, I think it's easy to dwell on the brilliance of Petticoat, and it certainly was brilliant. But yeah, like you said, I do want to give a lot of credit to Seth for the way he played, and also just for the way he handled himself after that find. I could see he was smiling and gave Annette her props, but then he also kind of was very businesslike afterwards and tried to, not get rattled, and made some great plays after. And I don't really think he made any mistakes. And he did get a couple nice draws with the back-to-back bingos, but he also played really well and got done what needed to get done. So I do want to give Seth a lot of credit too for how he played this game. He played really well.
Yeah, no question. Just a sharp game all around. It's, I just continue to be astounded by that find of Petticoat. I'm especially astounded by that because I just can't, like I said at the time, I just can't imagine that she studied that word. That was just natural anagramming skill, which is very different. We tell newer players in Scrabble, learn your prefixes, learn your suffixes, but actually what we're doing at the highest levels in Scrabble is much closer to pattern recognition than active anagramming, which is why it is good sometimes to your ability with those really long words, even longer than you would see in a Scrabble game, just to keep your natural anagramming ability fresh. And Petticoat is a testament to the fact that Annette clearly has that ability in spades.
100%. Yeah. And it's like you said, it's certainly not a common ending. I mean, there are some words that end in code, but it's certainly a far cry from qualifying as what I think anybody would consider a common suffix. So absolutely. I know Annette regularly studies on the Aerolith site and probably does some of the longer words there, which, as you said, I do them all the time too. And she's going to find all over here. So very well done Endgame play. But
and
yeah, like you said,
game,
you're often not going to play those words in the game. It's just great to stay sharp and keep your anagramming abilities up to speed. So yeah.
So if you allow me a pun, what could be a more reasonable play to end the game than all over? Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. I remember one time I've definitely
everyone.
played without before, and my favorite was I was playing both of our good friend Ben Schoenbrunn. He played out with 10 points. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah, it's easy to make these funny puns. The words that you play in Scrabble, like the self-descriptive words when Annette was struggling with consonants playing GAM and Seth was struggling with vowels playing IE. It's funny when the actual definitions align with some element of the play. So, yeah, but just a great game here. Let me update the scores and show you guys the final score. And that score is 478 to 365. Super impressive. There's the handshake. Seth is probably giving his props. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I think we're asking the players. We have been doing interviews. I'm sure we'll be happy to interview Seth. I mean, I'm happy to talk to Annette too if she wants to. Normally, we just interview the winning player, but I feel like we just need to give her some props for that insane find. But it's up to her. So we'll see what the players are willing to do. And meanwhile, in the chat, if you guys have any questions for either player that you'd like us to ask, feel free to put those in, and we will do so to the best of our ability. I don't know how many questions there are for Seth here, as you said, Mac, just because he really was making clearly best plays most of the time.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you said earlier, Will, really the only play I probably would have made differently was that opening play of Snarf, where I do think Raph would have been slightly better, but I wouldn't really call that a large mistake by any means. I mean, after that, it was a clinic. He was, I think, making the optimal play basically every move. And I mean, I'm certainly not surprised. Like I said, I've played probably over 20 tournament games against Seth. He's really good. He's really hard to beat. And, I've seen him make some brilliant plays both in our games and in other games. So not at all surprised. But yeah, like I said, props to both of these players, really, and that on that amazing find and also just some other really solid plays, and Seth for just hanging strong the whole game and just playing an outstanding game.
It looks like he's explaining to Annette something. The one thing I would love to ask him is his thinking behind Bolt. It looks like he's explaining that exact rationale right now, where he took the Q off the board and says, I'm playing Bolt because I want to draw into a big spot there. So he's basically already answering the one big question I wanted to ask him here. And looks like it must be producer Josh is asking him, you want to talk? All right, here we go. So the headsets are coming on in just a moment. It looks like both players are fitting those on. So, all right, we got our players headsetted. That was a pretty epic game. I know the headsets I'm not sure you guys can hear each other through, so we'll go one player at a time. Let's start with Seth. Great performance there. Oh, is he not hearing?
I hear.
Okay.
Just a lot of volume.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. It's too high. Are we screaming at you here?
Oh, a little bit.
Oh,
It's okay.
okay.
You're good.
We can
I'm just looking for.
We can bring
that's
the volume to golf commentator levels.
Thank you.
So we saw you explaining to Annette your thinking behind Bolt. We really love that rationale there. Can you just walk us through what you were thinking on that move again?
Sure. You still got the board camera?
Yeah, you can just explain it. We could see it all.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I had this rack, which is pretty horrible, and no place to play the cue that I saw. Maybe I missed something, but
Nope, not at all.
this wasn't here. So I could just do that and keeping a horrible lead, scoring 21. And that didn't seem good. That's just a recipe for disaster. So I noticed that QT, I just need to draw an A. And I wanted to maximize my chances of drawing that A because it seemed like an all or nothing kind of bet where if I don't get that A, I may be in bad trouble.
Or an I, right?
So,
Right,
true,
or
or an I,
yeah.
right? I had actually been looking for the I. Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I put bolt to maximize. Thank you. I put bolt to maximize my turnover. QTK feels a lot better. I know that, and I thought I had to decide between bot and bolt. And I went for the extra tile to try to draw the vowel.
Oh, bot with one T. Yes. Yeah.
Bot with one T. I could have done two T's. Well, two T's would have sort of negated what I was trying to avoid, which is opening the triple.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I figured I just
understood.
needed to take that risk. And also, as Annette just said, it creates a little bit of fear on her part that maybe I'm holding the S. And so, my opponent in this situation has to worry a little bit.
I wasn't even thinking that you were trying to set something
Right,
up. Like,
right.
I thought for sure you had an S.
It was a distraction. And so, so that just happened to pay off. And then my getting the S and shook, really paid off. So I was very lucky to get that.
Yeah, it was
Let's
a
talk
brilliant
about-
play. I just, believe me, we will get to that play. But Mac, did you have any other questions for Seth before we get to the obvious next item on the agenda here?
Yeah, no, I think that was definitely one play we were very curious about, just because obviously, and we talked about this, Will, how counterintuitive it is in general, right? When you have a lead, as Seth did at that point to open the board, but I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the only other play, Seth, we were curious about was your opening play with Snarf. We were wondering if you thought about Raph to maybe save the S and also not put the S in the triple line for bingos.
What did I do?
F.
Another R and another F.
Yeah, FR.
F
So
and
maybe.
Raph. I think I decided that I wasn't sure of Raph. Strangely enough.
There you go. That's
yeah,
as valid a reason as
It's
any.
totally understandable.
I just-
Those fours ending in two Fs are like notoriously confusing.
Yeah, I didn't want to get on tilt with a challenge. I mean, I liked it, but
NAF is good too.
I
right?
also figured I don't know.
NAF would have left RRS. So.
Oh, he had two R's, right?
Yeah. Also, I definitely. I got hit by RR disease earlier in this tournament. Snarf was one of the plays where I wondered that maybe that wasn't the best. But I also sort of wanted to score. I wanted to create volatility with snarfing, for better or for worse.
Yeah, no, if that's the biggest debatable move in the game, which it was for you, then you're doing pretty good. But yeah, we gotta move on to the Annette side of things. Obviously, for me, Petticoat, that's right at the top of the list of the most impressive plays that I've ever seen on a live stream.
Oh,
where does
thank you.
that rank for you, Annette, in terms of like plays that you've made in your Scrabble career?
I mean, it's got to be up there. I do feel like I'm a person who looks for nines more than most people. Doesn't mean I always find them, but I like looking for them, and I like that I just saw it right away. That doesn't always happen. I'm not Mac, but I feel like in this case, I felt like Mac.
Yeah,
Any follow-up, Mac?
Yeah, of course.
What was really impressive, too, I found in that was looking for nines is one thing, but an AT at the end of the word is not a natural.
I think it's just because I saw my rack and I was like, I'm so close to Petticoat, and then I'm like, oh, look, there's an AT. And it just like worked out.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely awesome to see. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's just with three T's, like there's nothing about that word is easy to see, right? With the three T's.
For sure.
Being an AT, and it's not even a common like prefix or suffix like you see in a lot of other cases. But yeah, no, I think it's easy to dwell on that because it was so brilliant. But there were definitely a lot of other really interesting turns early in the game. We really liked House at that point. Obviously, it's tough to come back.
I needed the points. I mean, the game was pretty much over for me at that point. I didn't think I had a chance to win, but got to take the points and just hope for the best. I did see nutball at the end, but I wussed out of it. I put it on my rack, and I didn't think it was good, which is sad.
It's a new word, yeah. So it's
that's how I recognized it, but I was like, I don't know. Why do I think this is good?
Yeah, the new words are the toughest to sort of get under your belt in a timely manner. I don't think I would have I definitely wouldn't have seen it. So it's, it just takes a little time with some of those new words.
Yeah.
Unfortunate that the only bingo you had available there was a new word,
Oh,
but
that was
obviously
the only one. That's good, at
it
least.
was, yeah.
Okay.
So
I feel
petticoat
okay
is
about
what
that.
petticoat earns you a lot of cover to miss something else. That was really amazing.
Hey,
And
I
yeah,
saw it though.
just
I put it on my rack. That's gotta count for
yeah,
something.
that's all you can ask. So
Yeah.
anyway, we'll let the two of you get to your next game. Thank you very
Okay.
much. That was a
Thank you.
truly epic game to watch. Congratulations, Seth, and great play, Annette.
Thank you.
That will be remembered a while. So
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
that was a great way to start off our afternoon session. Yeah, thanks guys.
Thank you.
Great game.
Thank you.
So, all right, there you have it. It's been banger after banger on the broadcast today, with pretty much no let up here. So, at some point, we're going to get a game where nothing that interesting happens. I'm just warning you, but maybe not based on the way things are going right now. So,
I
yeah.
certainly won't be complaining if we don't. I don't know. You will have been doing this already for several hours longer than I am, so maybe a game where that's not so exciting might be a little bit of a welcome reprieve for you. But I'm just getting started, and I'm loving what we're seeing so far.
Yeah, I'm loving it too. So we are very likely to have our next round matchup coming up quickly. I think that game was, I don't know, it was pretty fast to the finish line. But then again, we just spent a lot of time talking to our players. So we probably have a good chance of getting our round 9 game underway relatively quickly. So in the interim, I will just yet again, relentlessly, I've been saying it, easy way to show your appreciation for the great Scrabble live streaming that we're all getting to enjoy today, not just myself and Mac, but also all of you out there on YouTube. Consider clicking that button, that like button on the video, boosts it in the algorithm a little bit. And if you haven't already, definitely subscribe to the Let's Play Scrabble YouTube channel. Tons of great live streaming content coming out on a regular basis. We got to support the Let's Play Scrabble team, Josh Greenway, Kieran O'Connor, and everything that they're doing. So yeah, that's plug number 1. And just also want to say a huge shout out to the Word Game Players Organization, WGPO, for their very generous $5,000 donation to Montreal Scrabblefest 2024. Those are the two main plugs. And maybe while I'm at it, why don't we plug my co-commentator today, Mack Meller, probably the most prolific YouTube Scrabble content creator right now, Mac. Why don't you take a moment to tell us? I will be watching the renewed series with BestBot with great interest. I really feel like you drew terribly in that series, and I think you got a chance at it this second time around.
Yeah, thanks, Will. And before I talk about that, also a major shout out and thank you to Will, who actually really helped me boost my channel a couple of weeks ago. He posted not one, but 2 videos in a row featuring a couple of my notable games and plays. And I gained about 1,000 subs from those videos, which is absolutely awesome. So thanks, Will, for all your support and also all that you do for the Scrabble community and all of your YouTube videos. Awesome content every week. So always love to see that. And yeah, as for my Best Bud series, it's funny because I know a lot of my viewers really felt that I got quite unlucky in the first series, and overall I probably did, but I didn't honestly feel it was that bad. I still won 42 games, which is a little bit below what I was hoping, but it's not markedly below. And with a game like Scrabble, you have to allow for a little bit of wiggle room when you're dealing with 2 players who are fairly close. I do believe Best Bud is a little stronger than me, but not that much stronger than me. So if I say we're going to expect to win 45 out of 100, 42 is really not that big a difference. So I think I didn't get that unlucky. There were a couple games where I probably could have played a little bit better too. So I can't really complain that much. But yeah, super excited for the next series. We are 2 games in only, so it's still very, very early. So yeah, definitely, guys, please tune in. And I'd really, really appreciate if you would subscribe if you haven't already too. I'm really trying to boost that. So it'd mean the world to me if you could check that out if you haven't already. And button as well as, of course, for Will and Josh and the other Josh as well. Give a quick plug to Josh Sokol, our current Scrabble Players Champion, who also regularly puts out great content on YouTube and Twitch. So yeah, check all those out if you haven't already, guys. Lots of great stuff happening and lots more big tournaments happening this summer too that I know we're all super excited for.
Yeah, tis the season. It's coming up. July is going to have a huge amount of amazing Scrabble action in North America. So we're just ramping it up. I know a lot of players competing in events like Montreal are often doing it with an eye towards those big tournaments in July. Get that rust off, get ready to get out there and do the best you can in big events like the Word Cup, courtesy of WGPO. Of course, Scrabble Players Championship as well. So big events coming up. But yeah, with that, let's see. I think we probably can cut to our standings and have a look at how things are shaping up here. Wow, very strong performance so far by John Shrieve. He looks like a full game and a half up on the field, Mac. Anything else stand out to you here?
Let's see. So, hold on. Why? Oh, I see. A Nets game probably just hasn't been added yet. And then Seth, they're still at 7. So Seth is actually at 6. So he is just half a game behind John. It looks.
Oh
like.
Yeah, sorry, misread that. You're right. Totally.
No, you're good. But yeah, no. So it's this is a 15-game tournament, I believe. So it's still quite a bit early to say that they're pulling away. We're only about halfway through the tournament. So obviously John and Seth are a game and a half or in 2 games respectively above the field, which is a sizable lead. But anyone who's, on this screen is still in it if they can get hot, and everyone here is a fantastic player. So yeah, it'll be really exciting. Seth, again, back on stream facing 2-time defender top player Jackson Smiley. So this should be a really good game.
Yeah, Seth and Jackson coming up next. I mean, again, it's incredible. We watched a game between Jackson and 2022 champion Michael Fagan, where Jackson, he cannot be accused of not having done everything possible to try to win that game. He played some amazing words that are in the dictionary, a couple amazing words that are not in the dictionary, and definitely gave it his all. That type of strategic gambit is not likely to work as well against Seth, who is, again, really well studied up. We just saw him really just absolutely nail every word that he needed to find in that previous game, I guess with the exception of RAF. So if you can force him to find 4-letter words instead of 7 and 8-letter words, maybe you got a shot at it. But frankly, Seth knows the entire dictionary with a very high degree of accuracy. But so does Jackson. Jackson has really worked on that word knowledge to where it is absolutely not a weakness in any way, shape, or form. Much closer to a strength for him compared to almost anybody he's going to play. So yeah, Jackson's a scary opponent to play against, Mac. I know you've done it a number of times. Is there anything that you're looking to do in particular when you sit across the board from Jackson?
Yeah, it's tough, and with a lot of these guys, especially a player like Jackson, the thing is they don't have a lot of weaknesses, right? So you need to bring your A game. You can't really just hope that they mess up. That's not going to work. So you got to just play. Oh, I think we're getting ready to get started here. But yeah, no, it's tough to play against players like Jackson and Josh. They're just really sound both on word knowledge and strategically very hard to exploit. So you got to, I think, just the best advice I would give for Seth or anyone playing against the top player is don't let your opponent get in your head. Just be confident in your own game. Play each rack the best you can, your abilities, and don't be scared. Don't try to over adjust. I see sometimes a lot of people play too scared against stronger players, and I think that tends to hurt them a little bit more than it helps. So yeah, I think that's about all I would say, and let's go ahead and get this rolling.
Yep, Seth going first this time. Last round, we saw, I think it was Annette going first, but she exchanged a rack that we did not see in time. So Seth's going to get to go first this time as he remains on the stream. Jackson, obviously no stranger for all the reasons you described, all of his incredible strengths as a player. And what a feat it would be if Jackson, I assume, is going to be attending the Word Cup this year. To win it 3 straight times would be an absolutely astounding feat that, you really don't see too much of that in Scrabble, where there's a lot of good players, a lot of variance on a tournament to tournament basis. Winning a major tournament 3 years running is something that's really like Nigel Richards territory, frankly.
Absolutely. And World Cup has not been around as long as SPC slash NASC. So I'm thinking more to that. Has anyone other than, of course, the great Nigel Richards won 3 in a row of those? I want to say no.
Yeah, so he had one span where he won either 4 times in 5 years or 5 times in 6 years or something like that, where he actually did get a streak like that. I think from 2010, 11, 12, 13, he won 4 in a row, which is a record that we may never see again. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot goes into that. As we see Seth play Retax, by far his highest scoring play. I wonder if there's any merit to playing just EAUX here, but I definitely like Retax for Seth, Mac.
Yeah, another interesting option that I don't think I prefer over Retax, but I would have actually preferred over EAUX is just XU, because it's a lot more defensive and it keeps a little bit of a stronger bingo leave. But I do agree that Retax is probably too much to pass up. And having leaves, that's not a word, is it?
Oh, man, you can tell that Jackson is evaluating that. It's not a valid word. Playing that would almost certainly Seth challenge that word again for the reasons we described. He really has very good dictionary command, and he is going to be fearless as he draws pretty good letters. I'm not sure if he actually has anything available here, but either way, I don't think Jackson is going to play having.
No, I was going to say he's taking too long, and I think as Jonathan Lind pointed out in the chat, with that kind of play, it's pretty easy to see with such a clunky rack. And if you're Jackson, if you're going to phony, you want to do it quickly, because if you take a long time, that indicates to your opponent that you're probably unsure of it, because otherwise, why would you take 2 minutes and go for 84 points with a really ugly rack? So I think that was a smart play by Jackson. If maybe he wasn't sure of it, maybe he was debating phoning. We don't know. We can ask him after the game. But at that point, I think once he'd taken that long, he made the right decision there, just taking 48 for retaxing.
Yeah, it makes sense. The funny thing is playing retaxing in that spot blocked Seth from playing retaxing. He has ING on his rack as well. Cool. So I think Seth was probably like, ooh, look, I've just drawn ING, right? Now I can get this extension. And then Jackson playing the very same extension that he potentially hoped to play. And that does leave Seth with a much more difficult decision in terms of he's not likely to have a play that both scores any kind of good number of points and keeps a good leave here. It's going to be a tricky one. A couple plays that jump out. If he wants to keep ING together and score a couple points here, he could play something like EAU in this spot. Maybe he'll play it somewhere else. But either way, he could play Axenic through this X, except that's going to leave the awful GU on his rack. There are a lot of different directions he could go with this one, Mac. I'm not sure which one I favor. Maybe he's just going to plop the U down by itself. That could be decent as well.
Interesting. Yeah, it's tough because he's close to a bingo, right? Guidance with the D, for instance. And like you said, Will, the only really good scoring play I see is a Xenic, and GU is terrible as a leave. I didn't think about just XU as a fish. I worry it doesn't hit. I see with like an A or an E. I don't believe it would give him bingos, and I would give him Ryogenic. Another problem with fishing one tile, especially against a player who's so strategically sound and aware like Jackson, is that's going to ring major alarm bells to Jackson that Seth is really close to bingoing, and Jackson's going to do everything in his power to try to overlap and stop bingos, which does reduce the strength of a one-tile fish. So personally, I don't like that. I was actually thinking I might go with Guayak through the A for 18 to blow up this rack a little more and keep EN. Seth has Gun lined up now, which goes under the X. It's not bad. The lead is a little bit Val heavy for my liking, but it does score pretty well, and he does have the R to work with, so it's not terrible.
Yeah, gun. I mean, this is certainly the play that you just pointed out, guayak. That is I mean, there are a couple different locations for it, given that word. I mean, I'll just write out the word because it's kind of crazy looking. So this is the word. You would have played through this A here in either of the choices. That would score 18 EN. That does feel like a really nice intermediate type play that's not quite as extreme as just playing one tile for only 8 or 9 points, or playing for 30 points but leaving an absolutely awful leave. That being said, wow. So
Wow.
okay, so what's happened here is gun looks really good, except for maybe a slight imbalance. But Seth's drawn consonants that shockingly, normally that draw would not be that good, Mac. But you see what he's drawn.
Yeah. No, I think what we both realized it. I think we both said "wow" at the same instance there, and yeah, the Seth has drawn pedicab on his rack, which is a not like an obscure word per se. I believe it's like a bicycle taxi, but it's just not an easy word to see because, like we were kind of talking about with petticoat in the previous game with Annette, it's doesn't really have any common beginnings or endings. I mean, how many long words end in a B, right? It's just there's like alternating vowels and consonants. It's tough to see, but Seth, as we saw it immediately, and he's re-alphabetized his tiles, but we know he sees it. And yeah, if you're Jackson here, kind of a clunky rack. He has Faye lined up, which I guess he might play
Probably
with
here.
or above the R and the E. I'm not sure, but yeah, probably in that spot looks a little bit stronger, and that would block pedicab,
Yeah.
I believe. So of course
So
Jackson does not know that.
yeah, pedicab is going to fit right here with AR and B. And if Jackson just plays pretty much anything in this spot, that is going to end the dream. And that is really, it's just so painful, Mac, when you have such a nice 7-letter bingo on your rack. There's a spot for it, only one spot for it, and then you see it evaporate before your very eyes. Is there any candidate play that Jackson is even considering that might not block that? Like maybe he could try to play Vinify or something through this IN. That doesn't look worth it to me, but maybe he would consider it. I'm pretty sure he's going to end up blocking pedicab just through his normal play here.
HIVL is a pretty bad leave. Interesting. He switched to Fe, which I like, keeping VIYL instead of VIHL. Normally,
Yeah.
the H is a little bit better than the Y, but HV is pretty clunky together. And also with an L and IL on his rack, ILY is a pretty good group of letters together for synergy. So again, this is why Jackson is so good. He thinks beyond the basics, right? Of okay, an H is better than a Y, therefore I should play Fe or Fe rather, and kind of goes to the next step of looking at overall synergy. And it's absolutely a better play, but it's not easy to think about that in a game. And unfortunately for Seth, that is going to mean his very nice 7-letter word here is homeless.
Yeah, it hurts, but you got to shake it off. If you're Seth, you have to realize that, the spot was always relatively likely. So pedicab right here. How was Jackson?
Pre-taxing is not good, I don't think.
Oh, yeah, I think pre-tax is just an adjective. So, yeah. Oh, good point, though. So that is definitely something he's going to be considering.
Yeah,
and,
I wonder if he's thinking about it.
Yeah, very interesting point. That is, oh man, that's tantalizing. So that's a great point. I totally could imagine him now agonizing. He had this place to play pedicab, which was not controversial in any way. He knows that's valid. Now he's left with this decision. Pre-tax is a valid word, but it happens to only be an
He was just thinking about it, Will.
He's thinking about it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is so painful. I mean, ultimately in these situations, you kind of have to stick to your guns. You want it to be good so badly, but ultimately you have to trust your assessment of, I just remember pre-tax is a word. Pre-taxes, I don't think is a word, so therefore pre-taxing feels less likely to be one, but I can easily see him go for it, and he does.
Oh boy.
He does.
Oh boy, I
Oh,
feel like Jackson's going
huge.
to challenge this off, but
I agree, but this
yeah,
definitely puts him to the test in a big
yeah,
way.
it'll
This
be
is going to be a
interesting.
tough one.
Insta
Jackson
challenge.
insta challenge, not even a moment. So you know what this tells me? This tells me that Jackson has probably already thought this over of what am I going to do if a P
Hmm.
comes up? Like
Yeah,
well, he's putting pedicab just to be careful, and you can
sure.
see pre-taxing. You get wow, I love the word judge.me, and also the producer Josh Greenway of Let's Play Scrabble, the beautiful challenge screen. I just love that so much. Mac, I think that was a reasonable gamble for Seth to take, but I'm really impressed by that fast challenge.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting sequence of events there for sure. And I think you're right that whether the actual word has come up in a game for Jackson before and he just knew, or he was already thinking about it, maybe the fact too that that retax was the opener, right? And the P hook would have been available. And then after retaxing, it became unavailable, which was kind of an interesting dynamic we didn't really talk about when retaxing came down as an extension. But yeah, no, I mean, no major surprises there. And you saw Seth, you could kind of tell based on his face and the way he was maneuvering his tiles, he was agonizing over it. Like he kind of didn't like it, but it's so tough. You know, you're playing against a really good player, and they block your only spot for this bingo, and you really want a bingo, right? And it's frustrating. So maybe Seth's emotions might have gotten a little bit of the better of him there, but again, totally understandable. We've all been there before.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm very impressed by that challenge. I'm even more impressed by this play of Viney for Jackson. We know based on how he had his tiles set up that he actually saw that he had a really cool play of buy vinyl through the IN on the board. He had his tiles set up in that way, and that would have created a really nice hook for his S. But now he knows what Seth has. He's just seen all of Seth's tiles, and buy vinyl in this spot would have allowed Seth to play very nice high scoring plays like biped in this spot
Mhm.
that score very well. After Viney, there's very little going on for Seth on this board. He can hardly do anything in response. And Jackson, not only does he set up his L to play something with vinyl, he draws just a very nice, flexible combination of letters, and he still has an S hook here with Hags. So just a great adjustment there by Jackson, who I really think was going to play by vinyl and then switched over to this one, Mac, after seeing Seth's letters.
Absolutely, and yeah, it can cut both ways. You know, when someone challenges a phony off, especially a bingo, obviously that's another disincentive to risk a phony bingo, is because, like you said, Will, it gives your opponent such valuable information in addition to losing a turn. And sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming, I find, when you do challenge off a phony bingo because you have so much information, and until you get to the end game, it's not normal to have that level of information about your opponent's rack in Scrabble. So it can take a pretty big adjustment. But yeah, I think Jackson handled it perfectly there, and he is going to be able to bingo back with bistable is a word, I believe, and that's going to play
It
through
is.
the B. Like,
It's going
I
to be
think
an
that
absolute hammer of a play. Yeah, no
I
question.
think he actually
So
anticipated that because he had that lined up before biped came down. I think Jackson even figured that Seth was probably going to play biped and was just waiting for that, which is incredible.
that's amazing. Yeah, so biped in the spot where Seth played it scored 26. It would have scored 39 had Jackson gone through and played his what I think he was getting set to play of by vinyl. Would have scored 13 more points in that spot. So you can just see how much better on the exchange between the one turn and the next for Jackson. It's just worked out so unbelievably well for him, and the momentum has totally swung in
Well,
Jackson's
Seth will be
favor.
bingoing here, though, so this is not over.
No, by no means is it over. Just want to give Jackson his props for that very,
Absolutely.
very impressive sequence there. So yeah, it is back to Seth. He's drawn a blank, and no question in my mind that he's going to play a bingo. I guess a big question is, what does he think about this word of bistable? Does he think of it as an adjective, or does he think of it as a noun? that's kind of important if he's willing to go for it. It actually is defined. You see it there underneath the board as an adjective and a noun. So it can take an S hook. And if he's confident enough in doing that, he can play Crustle there for 80 points. What would you do here, Mac? Would you feel confident in that S hook? Maybe you already lost a challenge in this game, you're feeling a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah, I happen to know for sure that is valid. That being said, if I weren't sure, I like Seth's decision here. You really don't want to lose another turn. And he's, I think, only giving up about 2 points by doing this. So it's really not that big a sacrifice. Now, the one drawback to his play is it definitely keeps the board a bit more restricted. If he had played Crustle and Bistables, he would have created not only a line for 7s under the A and the L, but also created several more lines for 8s through the C and the R. So his play is inferior positionally, but it's very, very tough to be sure of that word. 8s to make 9s are a tricky bunch, and unfortunately for Seth, Jackson is about to score 78 more points here, Will.
All he has to do is open up his mind, Jackson, that is, to the possibility that he needs to use all of his consonants here. And if he does, you're going to see Matza be played, as you allude to, Mac, right here, 78-pointer on offer for Jackson. I do think he's going to see it, but I would just add it's not a gimme in the way that it would be if it was just, there we go. Okay, you can see pretty much, I'm pretty sure the light bulb just went off that, oh yeah, I have this word. There's no reason to wait. Maybe he was looking for other words that used up an extra vowel in there, but this is without question.
Yeah. I might be crazy, Will, but I think he was actually holding Crustle for a little bit there because he had Matza line before. I know he saw it, and Seth didn't draw for about 15 or 20 seconds, so maybe Jackson just wasn't 100% sure of Crustle and was holding it. That's what I think happened, but I'm honestly not positive.
Got it. Okay, that would make a little more sense. Maybe he saw it really, really fast there and was just evaluating the Crustle play from Seth and then decided, yep, that's a word. I'm going to go ahead and play Matza. So that makes sense. Cool. That's Seth showing off that he probably sees how close he is to dimwits. Not quite.
He can play dimwit through the T in Matza, and it's honestly probably not a bad play. It scores 26 points. It keeps PS. What I don't love from Seth's perspective in general here is that he's down over 100 points. And like I was saying with Crustle, this is not a great board for him for bingoing, especially after dimwit. I mean, if Jackson blocks the M, there's the G on the right, but he's starting to run out of real estate. The board is feeling fairly compressed towards the middle right now. Another option, and again, it would rely on the Bistables hook, is he could play Wimps and Bistables, which scores a lot more and is probably worth it, especially given the size of his deficit, if he is confident it's a word.
Yeah, that's the main question. Is he thinking about that S hook as in play for him here? All right, this is probably a move that if Seth's at all uncertain of Bistable taking an S, this is a must as a move. It could also be worth doing regardless, just because you really do set up your S hook in a dangerous way that could be difficult for Jackson to deal with if he has pretty much exactly the type of rack that he does have. Jackson's going to be doing his best to overlap this spot, and he'll probably have some play or other that accomplishes that, but it's going to be tricky to shut it down altogether.
Jackson needs to be really careful here, too, about how he blocks, because this is a mistake I've seen a lot, guys. If, say, Jackson plays our, O-U-R, next to O-M and up, he actually isn't blocking, because Seth could potentially now not only bingo, but actually triple. There are a lot of words that have RS there, and that becomes a long-term liability for Jackson. So he probably should try to block this, but he just needs to be very, very careful about how he goes about doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like he's even kind of close after a play like that. He's really close, is Seth, to having exactly that sort of play that might have, an RS combination. Yeah, it's going to be tricky.
Out is a
But
little bit safer. There are considerably fewer words with TS in the middle like that. I saw he had out lined up before.
true. Okay, yeah, that looks a little better than the R. You would definitely want to pick a tile like the T to place in this spot right here that doesn't mesh super well with an S hook there. And I guess it's also worth noting the Y is lurking, and making it very difficult to use the Y here is also kind of a nice consolation. Seth is trailing, but not by so much that a good play hooking Wimpy is going to score very, very well in this spot. It's going to get Seth, if he were to hit that play, it's going to get him pretty close on the scoreboard. So that's definitely a factor here as well. So that's definitely the red alert spot, and Jackson's going to make as good of a block as he can. I'm really curious to see what he ends up choosing. Maybe he'll go a totally different direction, but I highly doubt it. I think he's going to play something down there come hell or high water.
Yeah, I mean, you could consider just ignoring the spot. I think this is why, as was pointed out too in the chat, Seth's play of Wimp, even if he was served by Stables, is not a bad idea. He's in a very bad position, and he needs to recognize that. And this play with a lot of racks, as we're seeing here, does give Jackson a hard time, which is exactly what Seth needs to do to get back into this game. And yeah, I think so. Out is an option. I'm just not really seeing any other good overlaps or plays through the P that seem promising. I mean, yeah, I just don't see. You could, one option maybe. How about playing Root from the R and Crustal? And I think that's what he's looking at right now. I actually just noticed it on his rack because it blocks. What's nice about it is it blocks bingos for the most part, hooking Wimp. It's sort of an indirect block where you block a spot without actually playing in that spot. And of course, like you were saying, Will, Seth could easily still hit something with a Y for 60 points, but at least Jackson averts the disaster scenarios. He avoids triple triples. He avoids very heavy hitting bingos. I think I actually like that the best the more I think about it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Also note that if you play Route here, spending your E, you have a great chance to redraw another one. So normally you would want to hold that precious E to the best of your ability. And as you said it yourself, Mac, plays alongside here that block can often still get hit really hard, deceptively hard. You can make things worse for yourself. Whereas the play of Route here, it will do a lot to take the sting out of a Wimp's play. It's going to block a lot of 7-letter words that you would normally be able to play with Wimps, and it doesn't have that same huge downside risk of giving back some kind of unexpected massive play there. It is worth noting that Jackson's going to block this spot. He's probably going to go ahead and play Route, which I think both of us like. And then Seth is going to play Dappiest right here. And then all hell is going to break loose because depending on what the players draw, there's going to be a wide open spot at the top of the board, a gigantic Y hook to score with, and of course, another blank lurking. Don't forget this G for ING words with a ton of I's and N's left over. I'll get my chicken scratch off now. So this game is about to get crazy in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously, as I've said a few times, we realize that the players don't really realize that. But I think this is just lending more credence to the idea that Wimp was the right play for Seth on the last turn. And interesting, Jackson is going to go with out. He was clearly waffling for a while. And Jackson is normally a pretty fast player early in the game. He likes to save his time for the pre-endgame and endgame, which is generally a good way to play. I myself try to play like that too. And Jackson spent, I think, about 5 minutes on this turn, which is a lot for him, but I think it was warranted. It's a really tough turn, and it has a lot of implications, as we're going to see, for the rest of the game. So interesting that he went without. This is definitely, if we talk to Jackson after the game, this is definitely a turn I want to talk to him about for sure.
Yeah, really nuanced, complex decision there, and an absolute nightmare draw for Jackson here. You could easily see Seth reach into that bag and pull out something.
He's going to have to draw for 36, I think. No questions asked, right?
Yeah, I agree. Just QAT at the bottom, but that leave can really get ugly fast with even one more vowel draw. It's just going to be brutal for him. So let me just get the score updated here. So you can see after that bingo, Seth is hot on Jackson's heels in the scoreboard. But what if Seth draws something like, well, it's going to get blocked if Jackson just plays cat down here. But if Seth were to draw something like YS blank, that would be... Like he would have maybe a 2-turn sequence of something gargantuan here and something here. Either way, he doesn't even need the Y. If he just draws well enough, maybe he's going to triple up there
Just
and
like
just
retyping or something for 220 or whatever. That would be crazy.
yeah,
But he is
yeah.
not.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
2 brutal draws.
Interesting.
Both
So I
players.
take back what I said before about Cott being obvious. Jackson is strongly considering here playing between Dowdius and Bistable, something like Re or Row, with the idea of scoring pretty well and blocking a little bit on top while also saving Cott for next turn, hoping that Seth doesn't block. It's an interesting thing to consider. Jackson, I think, makes the right call here ultimately in just shedding the Q, and you still do block the bottom a little bit. The D in the third spot is not all that scary. So yeah, I think Jackson was definitely correct to consider playing up there, but I do agree with his call. And yeah, now we're gonna have to see how Seth handles this vowelless rack. Very bad timing for this kind of draw.
Yeah, but then
I think it's
Jackson
never
gets,
good timing, but especially on this kind of board.
yeah, but Jackson does get the classic play a Q and draw a U combination, which is brutal. So yeah, I mean Seth, he's got a spot or two on this board. The one that really jumps out is this O. So with all those consonants, the nice saving grace of all the consonants on Seth's rack is he has the CK, CH. He has very synergistic combinations of consonants that will allow him to dump a bunch of them at once. I think his best play here is probably Gaunch through that O. Bit of an obscure word, but it would hit the H in this really good spot. Let's see if he ends up playing it. He does. That's going to be a nice job by him. I like it, Mac.
Yeah, I think it's best by a mile. I mean, I don't see anything else that's more than 4 letters long through the O. The first thing I saw was Hawk before I spotted Gaunch right around, I think, the same time that you did, and it's clearly worse. It's way fewer points, gets rid of one fewer consonant. He does want to reach for that blank. So yeah, absolutely the best play for Seth. And yeah, now Jackson probably going to be looking at something like Euro on top. I'm guessing a fairly low scoring play, but he's got to rid himself of some of these E's.
Yeah, no question. Something like that seems warranted. Talking of Euro, something like that up here. I really also feel like that second blank, I would just really want to try to get it at all costs. I guess it is worth noting that maybe he would be tempted to play just NEE right here. It scores well. The leave is decent. It looks like he's set aside those tiles on his rack right here. So maybe he'll do that and think that the other 5 tiles on his rack, maybe he'll draw a 7-letter word that he could play up here. Maybe he'll draw an 8 through the G. It's a couple things that can happen. But he does play that. I would have been sorely tempted to play Euro just to go a little bit harder to get the blank. But I don't really find too much fault with this one, Mac.
Yeah, it's an interesting turn. Another option, too, I saw after was Inure, which looks kind of crazy, putting the E above the triple letter score. But really, the F was actually the only thing left in the pool that would have hurt Jackson, which he happened to just draw. And it does, again, we're talking about that blank and that S. It does give Jackson a little more turnover, and every tile does matter, and it also gets him 3 extra points. I'm guessing why he didn't like Euro was because it gives back a very easy line for Seth for 7s under that O. And Euro actually doesn't make that line so easy. I think Jackson's play is clearly the safest as far as reducing Seth's options. He does still have a lead. It's not a big lead, but it is a 40-point lead. And yeah, it's an interesting turn. I think the more I think about it, the more I agree with his decision. At first, I definitely wanted more turnover, but yeah, the other plays do look a little bit awkward positionally. So yeah, now we'll see what Seth is going to do. He could play something like Silky on top if he just wants to score, but that would require getting rid of his S.
Yeah, he does have a couple nice other alternative options, like Raya down in the lower left corner scores decently well. It keeps the S. It does only use 2 tiles. If you really are wanting to burn through tiles and try to get that blank, you could play Silky up here, and that accomplishes that objective much more so. Plenty of other options. Risky right here is another good score. So there's a bunch of options that score well for Seth, and they're all going to get him pretty close on the scoreboard to Jackson. So this game knotted up in a hurry. Remember, after bye stable, Jackson was up huge, but Seth's done very well to work past that pre-taxing play with Pedicab and get right back into this thing.
For sure. And another thing to note here too, guys, is the pool is vowel heavy. From Seth's perspective, he's looking at 18 vowels and 14 consonants, which is a pretty significant disparity in favor of vowels. So Seth does want to keep that in mind. I would personally go with Silky here. It does get rid of the S, but it's 41 points. And the turnover is nice. You also blocked that spot for Jackson. And the S is a nice tile, but it doesn't feel great at this moment. Again, there are no big S hooks. Like it's more important, I think, to go for the blank. That being said, you can't really argue with Rhea in the bottom left either. That scores very well, and that's another scoring spot for Jackson potentially too. So yeah, a lot of reasonable options here.
Also want to just call out that we have a bit of an O situation happening here. So it's certainly a normal instinct would be to just go ahead and play Silky and other stuff like that. I wonder if Seth has any increased urgency to use some O's on any play that he makes. I don't really see a great play that is worth using the O here. Maybe.
Yeah, Morris points out in chat, he could just play Oi for 28 next to Dowdius. ILKRS is constant heavy, but again, like I was just saying, it's a very vowel heavy pool. So yeah, I don't think that's such a crazy idea either. But yeah, that is a fair point for sure with Selkie. OR is with 5 O's and 3 R's is really not a great leave, honestly, to be drawing into with this pool. I do admit that.
Any love for Oik in this spot, leaving the very synergistic SLRY? Maybe that's, even though it's technically 3 consonants and a vowel-ish consonant, the L and Y harmonize well together, and you could fill out with 3 vowels and still kind of be in a good situation here. Something to consider. I think that's way off the beaten path, but it's actually a reasonable option. And we do see Oi for Seth responding to that O situation a little bit. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think this is one of those turns where there were probably 4 or 5 plays I think were all close and reasonable. And it's, very hard to know, like, how do you weigh these different factors? Like, it's good to consider all these factors, but sometimes it's hard to know which ones to prioritize. I think Oi, Rhea, Silky, Oik, I think was not unreasonable either, like you said. I think I'm definitely fine with Seth's play here. He still holds the S to go above the H, and has a good chance of maybe even drawing something like Silkier next turn or something like that. So yeah, now we'll have to see how Jackson wants to play this. He did draw the F, which is not a bad tile, honestly, relative to some of the tiles in the pool.
Yeah, the F is going to help Jackson to stay one step ahead on the scoreboard. One thing to note, normally the U is like a must-shed tile from any rack, but in this particular pool, look at how good these letters are. For bingoing in general, there's pretty much only the J, but most importantly, there are no more U's that you can draw, no W's that are really bad with the U. It's actually as good as a situation as you're ever going to see to potentially keep the U on your rack. Maybe if you just got that V out of here and replaced it with another letter, that would be slightly better. But a 4 in this spot does a lot of good things. There aren't really any whammy consonants that you would see after an E in this spot. It's not really possible to hammer this spot. You draw 5 tiles towards the blank, and the U is not normally it's abnormally not toxic here. So I actually really like this play for Jackson a whole lot here, Mac.
Yeah, totally agree with everything you said. And yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying on the turn before, right? When I pointed out Inure was a possibility, not necessarily the right play, but the only thing that can go above or below that E was the F, and well, Jackson just played the F. So Seth is going to capitalize, I imagine, with Drink pretty quickly there, which looks like a great play for him to clear out this rack, which I'm sure was not too happy to draw after his play of Oi pulling 2 consonants out of that bag. But yeah, you got to be pretty happy to see a 4 come down if you're Seth. Great ballot play, keeps LS drawing into a Val heavy pool with a blank unseen. Seth is down a little bit, but he's not going to be down much after drink, and this is absolutely still anyone's game.
Yeah, it's crazy that it is this close after how it seemingly knotted up it was in Jackson's favor. Couple different things for Jackson to consider now. First of all, we're going to have to watch with bated breath as Seth draws these 5 tiles. He could easily pick that valuable blank right now. And if he does, the odds of him picking great tiles to go with it are incredibly good. There's just very few whammy tiles. There's very few, bad combos that he can draw if he does pick that second blank here. So Jackson is going to have to hope against hope that it's still lurking in there when it comes time for him to go next into the bag. And there we go. Ooh. Wow. So that's about as bad of a draw as you could see for Seth, unless he has some great play that I'm not seeing. He drew the V. That's not a good bingo tile. It's not going to score very well here. And the blank is still in there, lurking potentially for Jackson if he plays Rioja, Mac.
Yeah, definitely, like you said, not at all what you want to see if you're Seth. But from obviously Jackson's perspective, he does not know what Seth has. And this is a pretty terrifying pool to be against with a lead. And I think I like Jackson's play here. The other consideration which he had on his rack was Zhao through the eye and drink, which scores about the same, 1 point less. It keeps an extra Val, which is definitely not what he wants, given there's still plenty in the pool. And Rioja does open some floaters on the bottom, but it's not that easy to start with an A, which Seth would need to do to score a lot. And Jackson does go up about 45 here, so he could potentially be in a position to outrun Seth if he does bingo for not a lot. So I think Jackson needs to not be too scared. And he does draw the blank, but he draws more vowels to go with it. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this one plays out.
Yeah, insane. So now, given Jackson's really poor vowel draw, it feels like if Seth makes a good enough balancing play, getting rid of the V, he might actually be roughly even odds with Jackson to get the first bingo down, or whatever the next bingo down.
It just keeps NOST with all those E's and I's is a great lead. You set up your S. I mean, Seth needs to be aggressive here. He can't be – if you're Seth, you have to bingo to win this game. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And you can't be afraid of Jackson bingoing, because if Jackson bingos, you're going to lose anyway. So you have to play hoping that Jackson doesn't bingo. And that is very possible, guys, because look at the pool. 10 vowels and 6 consonants. Even though there's all those good tiles, it's not that likely. And actually, there's a better variant of viol with an A. Morris points out he should absolutely play viol with an O, V-I-O-L, to set his A as well. With only, yeah, that's a great play here.
Yep. Setting up the A for a little extra flexibility. You could extend it with an S. You could extend it. Ooh, this looks like
that's still fine, though, honestly. I mean, ALST, he still sets up his S. I think it's slightly worse, but it's still a very solid play.
It's still solid, but you just wonder, what if he draws a 7-letter word with, an A in just the wrong spot that it might have played there. So I think a slight improvement, but I agree. These are very close plays for sure. In all likelihood, I also think viol maybe is a little better just because you keep the N, and maybe that works a little bit better with a G than some of the other letters that you have. So it's close. I do think viol is probably slightly better, but this game is coming down to the wire.
He's got isolates through the O in Rioja. Does he have anything else?
Oh, there we go. Jeez.
Fit with Vinos.
This is
with G. Is there anything? There's also, it's hard to hit, but there is the possibility of maybe bingoing through the M in Matza. If you start with a tile before.
Yes, that is an underappreciated little spot that it's definitely possible. You don't want to discount it. I'm sure there are some situations where that would be the decisive factor of being able to play through that M. So this is fascinating because so much hinges on what Jackson plays. I think he's going to know full well that he really needs to hold on to that N and hope that he draws a couple of consonants here. But even if Seth gets isolates down, Jackson will easily have plenty of opportunity to respond with a bingo that's going to clinch him the game, even after Seth bingos. So just because Seth is sitting on isolates, yes, that is definitely very good for him. It is far from an ironclad win, even if he plays it.
If I were Jackson here, I would not block the bottom. I would leave everything open because I think there's enough bingo lines, right? Because there's also the Venus hook. And from Jackson's perspective, Seth is pretty likely to have an S with that pull. If Seth is a good enough rec, you're not going to be able to stop him from bingoing. I think Jackson should focus more on the counter bingo, like you said, because absolutely he's up enough that if they trade bingos, Jackson, especially bingoing out, will win this game every time. Another thing to mention, every tile left is worth 1 point. So it is going to come down to, Seth needs to bingo and hope Jackson doesn't bingo to win. If they bingo the same amount, Jackson's going to win. That's what this game is going to come down to. So Jackson could try to play on the bottom with G or Je. But again, the problem then is if Seth bingos elsewhere, Jackson is going to have fewer lines to bingo back. So I think if I were Jackson, he's looking at Emu through the M, which I really like. Getting rid of 3 of his vowels and just leaving everything open. You've got the blank. If Seth bingos, you've got a bunch of lines to bingo back, and I think this is the right call.
Yeah, really fascinating. Emu in that spot, scoring only 6, but almost with any kind of flexible draw. From Jackson's POV, he would love to draw an S because that would open up this spot on the board, but even without it, isolates does not go far enough. This G is going to be very, very flexible for Jackson to use. And he'll just have Neologic. Yeah, Neologic. That's going to do it. So leaving that G open, and he's drawn the I. That's easily enough. Let me get these scores in quickly.
The only one?
Whoops. Hold on.
Might be the only one.
Something wrong for me here. Did I...
He's got it. Yep.
Yeah, he sees it. All right, hold on. I did something weird with the tile pool. I'm trying to figure out what that is. So for some reason, I'm missing an L here. Oh, because I committed Viol and not Vino. Okay, I got this. I'm going to get this back. We had Vino, Emu, and Isolates. And we'll get that score. Jackson's probably just evaluating as best he can. Is there any possibility of this word? Am I imagining this word? Is there any other word that's more likely than this? I think everything should be now up to date. Sorry, everybody. Okay, yeah, this looks correct. And Neologic, that's it. We already know he spotted it. Yeah,
and I just checked on my phone too. That is the only playable bingo. And yeah, we know he sees it. We know he's going to play it if he can't find anything else. And he's not going to find anything else because there is nothing there. So this is going to come down, but totally for Jackson. If has any doubt, he has 3 minutes. There is no reason not to take it. And all you need to do is find any bingo that you're sure of and play it. So yeah, it turns out there's nothing else there. And he's gonna bingo out and win this game. But yeah, I do want to address it. An interesting point was made by Morris. Could Seth have considered not bingoing there with isolates? I think the problem is if Seth doesn't bingo again, it's what I was saying before. There's only 1 pointers left. So the idea with not bingoing would be to try to time it better, right? To hope Jackson bingos first and then Seth bingos out. The problem is I still just don't think he was going to get enough because he'd only be catching Morris with 1 pointers. Like normally that tends to work better when there's some higher scoring tiles in the bag, and it's absolutely a good strategy to keep in mind, but I'm just not sure he was going to quite get enough. I mean, I need to look at the math a little closer. He could have scored a bit with something like Matzah's and SI. It's possible that could have given him some chances, but on the other hand, he doesn't know Jackson has the blank, right? I mean, Jackson might have not even had the blank and might not be able to bingo out after isolate. So tough call for sure, but interesting to think about.
Yeah, incredibly so. Typically in situations like that are very taxing to permute, especially with a blank lurking, which makes it even more challenging to figure out if Jackson has the blank and these letters, Now you've got to look through the O, the J, the A, the G, and potentially hooking Vinos. That's a lot of different spots that you have to try to figure out. If your instincts suggest that, playing a bingo is, if you're just going to win every time when your opponent doesn't have one, it's pretty hard to pass that up. Of course, we know that your opponent does have one a heck of a lot of the time. So it's tough. It's tough. I do feel like maybe when you actually math it out, you're going to find, as Jackson does lay his winning bingo down here, and Seth, just a deep breath. He'll challenge it, of course, but this is the only winning play available here for Jackson Smiley, and a pretty epic win, Mac, in the process here.
Yeah, what a game. I mean, so much to unpack here. I feel like, I hope we get to talk to both of these players. There was just so much back and forth in this game. And yes, just an S drop there. Scores almost 30 points. And potentially if Seth pulled something like Glarious out of the bag from the G and Jackson didn't bingo there, that might have actually been enough for him in the trade. So that's something we're not going to solve here right now, just thinking back. But that would be a very interesting position where Seth bingoed with isolates to look at in more detail. Because it is very possible, the more I think about it, that not bingoing could have been a better play.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that from our standpoint here, just looking at the situation with the aid of actually not being on the board, it feels like maybe it creates a much more complicated situation at minimum for Jackson. I just feel like it's so challenging to tease it out. It's a very human decision to go for it. If you think that bingoing is anywhere close to a good non-bingo play, there are so many to evaluate too. Do you just play your S with wimps? Do you try to play a vowel along with it somewhere? Something like as and vinyls scores 20. This scores 27. Playing up here scores a bunch and doesn't really, this one would block. If Seth had played as, it would have blocked Neologic for whatever that's worth. Of course, I guess Jackson, I don't know, maybe would he have had something through the J or O of isolates? I'm not sure. Probably
there
not.
would have still been two in the bag, so Jackson would have just counterfished an O probably.
True, right. In which case, if Seth drew a bingo, that would lead to a winning. He would just bingo out at that point.
Right,
so.
and it's just, you'd have to look at the math, right? Really, the question is for Seth, how often does it right, and that's another thing, too. Jackson could also pass up the bingo. It's very complicated. Crazy.
Yeah, extremely so. I'm sure the players would concur with us that it's very difficult to tease out what the heck is I guess we're coming in hot on the player mics. Maybe we'll try to talk softer for you guys.
Testing.
Yes. So
We're good.
I mean, we've really had banger after banger on the stream so far, and this game was absolutely no exception. Not even sure where to start. I guess we'll start with Jackson coming away with a win in this game. Extremely impressive. I guess I think it was perfectly natural for Seth to have tried pedicab, but your play of Viney, we just love that on the stream. Talk us through Viney there. It seemed clear that you had set up by vinyl on your rack, but you pivoted to Viney. That was incredibly savvy play on your part.
Yeah, I mean, at first I was planning on playing by vinyl just to set up the S, because the L hook on vinyl, while it's useful, it's not super useful with BILST. So I was more excited to set up the S hook, but once you played pedicab, it just gives much more comebacks, like 13 more points to play those same tiles as biped next to by vinyl. So it was pretty clear to sacrifice that and not give him that score. Since BILST has some synergy anyways, there's really no question at that point that I'd rather go that route. But then, there was no plan. There was no plan in place to do the biped by stable, except once
you didn't plan that.
No, once I drew the rack though, I was like, oh shit! I hope he plays biped.
You had a long time to look at it because I was taking a while.
Yeah, makes total sense. That was really amazing. That was pretty next level thinking on your part there. Mac, any questions Jackson made a number of awesome plays in this game. Both of you did, but any questions for Jackson?
Yeah, man. There was. I feel like we could probably talk about this game for an hour. There was a lot here. The other turn, Jackson, I was really interested in that you waffled on for a lot when you played out instead of root from the R. Like we were talking about on the stream, right? The first thing I saw
Yeah.
was our OUR, and we were talking about how that could give back triple triples. Out, it's pretty unlikely to have something blank blank TS than 4 more tiles. But yeah, we were sort of leaning more towards route because out could still give back a lot of overlaps and Y plays there, and route does get rid of an extra valve. But just curious to hear your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, honestly, my main thought is that type of position is probably my position I struggle with the most in this game. When you have a kind of clunky, bad vowel rack and you're trying to deal with an open from the player, I find those decisions very hard. But the main idea was, I was pretty sure he wasn't keeping a Y. I figured Wimpy would just come down if he had the Y.
Didn't have it.
You didn't, yeah. Dowdius came down. So I was more worried about the S. Obviously, root does block S bingos anyways. It does get back more lanes immediately. I wasn't too worried about high-scoring plays here just because of the score. I felt like that was a kind of okay outcome. I like blocking a few just scoring plays with the S in case he had something clunky he drew. And also, I figured that out setting up plays next to it would kind of block the Wimpy hook more conclusively next turn, whereas after route, it might just take another turn of a sacrifice in a similar fashion, and I didn't really want to do that again. That was the main thinking, but I think it is really close between the two.
Yeah, no, we did too. That totally makes sense. And yeah, I agree. Those are some of the hardest turns in the game to figure out, especially. And I mean, I think Wimp was a great play by Seth. The first thing we were looking at was Wimwit to the T, which I believe, Seth, you lined up on your rack. But yeah, Wimp was a really good play. I think you were down a lot and you had to create some space. And as we saw, it really complicated things for Jackson. So was that sort of what you were thinking on that turn, Seth, that you kind of had to make something happen quickly?
Yeah, exactly. I thought, I was holding the S. Yeah, I kept IDS. And I felt like I needed to make something happen. And Jimwit was a cute play, but it didn't do what I needed the board to do because I was all blocked down with, below by stable. And Crustle was not my friend. So I felt like I needed to make things happen.
Yeah, it was totally warranted. It ended up forcing Jackson into a really difficult situation, and then you get Dowdiest, and all of a sudden the board is, things are getting kind of wacky at that point. The second blank is still lurking. Of course, before Jackson played Cat, the Y was still available for Wimpy. It's possible to, get a lot going on that board. But I guess, final question before we let you guys go. Obviously, at the end of the game, you play isolates. You know the bag is looking good. The chat on YouTube is still trying to figure out what the heck to do there. I actually think bingoing is about as good as any of the non-bingo plays that you could make there. It's just such a difficult position. But did you evaluate any plays there that were not the bingo of isolates, or did you just think I got to go for this?
No, I figured there were too many opportunities with O, A, J a little bit, G, the S hook that I set up, the O itself. There's just so many things with the blank that I know that I cannot figure out all of those possibilities with 5 in the bag. That's not going to happen. So I gotta score points and roll the dice and hope. Were there plays that people thought would?
I really don't think we've established any that are like obviously better or more, winningest compared to isolates. It is just a brutally complicated position. I feel like I almost certainly would have played isolates there as well. Just curious because it's such a challenging position to navigate. But of course, Jackson with the only playable bingo of Neologic to clinch it. So that was a pretty epic game. Thank you both for sharing your thoughts. We'll let you guys advance to your next round, but congrats, Jackson. Commiserations,
Thank
Seth.
you.
Good luck to you both going forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
So there you have it. Wow, that was really fascinating. And that's just our second game of the afternoon. We got 2 more coming. Absolutely amazing stuff, Mac. It's been a pleasure so far for sure.
Yeah, both of those games, and I don't know, kind of similar but also different ways, were both really, really entertaining. The first one was more just fireworks, I'd say, in terms of word finding. This one was just really, really tough strategical choices from both of them. And I think they both played really well. Probably, I mean, unsurprisingly, I think we'd all agree the turn that Seth is going to be regretting the most is the phony with pre-taxing and pedicab. But like I said, it's totally understandable in that kind of situation to want to go for it. But yeah, otherwise, I think both of these players played an outstanding game. Yeah, and those pre-endgame situations, like the chat is still trying to figure out, like you said, it's hard to know. And Seth should, even if not bingoing is correct, it's so hard to figure out in the game, and bingoing is more straightforward. He should not be beating himself up about that. Yeah, it was a great game. Well played to both of them. Obviously, props to Jackson on coming away with that win in the end. And yeah, looks like we're going to have some new folks, at least for me. Maybe you've had them on the stream already, but John Shrieve versus Sam Hollington, who are both also very, very strong players. I've had many difficult games against both of them, so it should be an entertaining match.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we are able to cut to the standings so we can see how those two players are shaping up here in the North American Lexicon division, but I have to assume that John Shrieve earned their spot, and there you have the answer. We've seen it already that John has been pacing the field. He's currently in first place in this very difficult field. We now know that Seth just took a tough loss to Jackson, so Jackson is going to pop up to what looks like third place as Seth remains in second, and it looks like Sam is going to get his crack at the leader, John Shrieve, coming up right now. So let's see if John can hold on to his tenuous grasp of first place. Maybe it's not that tenuous because he does have a pretty good point spread that's going to win him some tiebreakers against some of the other players at the 6-3 level. But it's only a 15-game tournament, Mac. These standings are going to be knotted up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I mean, 6 games is not that much more, but it's also a lot more when you're dealing with, I think there were 8 people within 2 games of the lead. And with 6 to go, anybody within 2 of the lead is absolutely in this thing, which is why Sam is getting the chance to play John, as he absolutely should. That's the general philosophy of pairings at Scrabble tournaments. You know, within reason, if people have a shot to win, they should be given that shot. And yeah, Sam is obviously a really, really strong player and capable of beating anybody in this field, and he's showing that this tournament. So it should be probably more or less a must win for Sam if he wants to stay in the running, I would think, at this point. But it should be a really good game.
Yeah, I think Sam is a Canadian player who I think he's been sort of a solid, expert player for at least a decade or 2 now. So somebody that can definitely put forth a very solid effort and expect a strong game from him. Of course, John, a very strong player in his own right. We've seen him once already in a pretty fascinating game. That could have gone either way at the very end on I think last night we saw him. Can't remember who he played. It was whatever it was. It was a pretty epic finish to that game. And of course, we know John for his incredibly generous patronship of the Word Game Players organization, and probably could directly trace back to John some of the very generous prize money that has been allocated for this tournament. So again, Word Game Players organization, a very generous sponsor of Montreal Scrabblefest 2024, and we want to definitely shout them out for that. So yeah, I know the players are behind the scenes. I think our producer is corralling them to get started with this next round here, but man, it's going to be a tough bar to reach with the games that we've seen so far, Mac. It's easy to say this, but the games have been consistently unbelievably good so far on the stream. So
yeah, that's awesome, because I've definitely, whether as a player or as a commentator, a few times been parts of streams where the games are definitely not interesting, and it's part of the deal with Scrabble is whether it's easy to look at it, unfortunately, as sometimes the games are just not going to be interesting, but at the same time, as a player, you just have to kind of embrace that fact, I think, and realize that even if things aren't going your way at one moment, that can change within not even one game, but on one turn. And we saw it a little bit in the first game, right? After seemed like Seth had completely locked the board down, and Annette plays Petticoat to an AT as a natural 9, and all hell sort of breaks loose. So as we see, anything can happen, even in games that don't seem interesting at first. But yeah, no, absolutely. The first two games have been really, really fun and complicated and a lot to unpack. So I think we're ready to go though, guys, for game number 3. So let's do it.
Yeah, so I think the players are, if we cut to that board, we can see John and Sam are getting ready to rock in this game. Yeah, John pacing the field right now at the top of the standings. And as you said, Mac, Sam is in position to get a crack at him. Still a bunch of games left, 6 games to go in the tournament. So anybody, even a 5-4 record like Sam, could easily go on a run and still take this thing down. So let's see if Sam can start one of those runs right now, and he's picked a great target to do it, which is the guy at the top of the standings. So we'll let the players know that they can begin as soon as they're ready, and we will get straight into round 10. We passed the halfway point here, I guess midway through round 8, I suppose you could say. So we still have this game and one more coming today before we call it a session, then pick up the action with the decisive 4 games tomorrow. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me so far, Mac. Hopefully we get another good game to sink our teeth into as John goes first here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on, Will, and as well to Josh behind the scenes. It's been a lot of fun, and yeah, especially so since we got good games. But even if they weren't so interesting, it still would have been a lot of fun. And is John going to be bingoing here? Let's see. He's got pretty good rack. He has transit, so I am quite confident he's going to find that. And really the only question is where do you place it? There's a bunch of mediocre, or I should say mediocre. They're all good because it's always good to open with a bingo, but there's sort of a bunch of seemingly equal-ish 66-point placements, and it's kind of hard to pick one.
Yeah, it's interesting because just based on the arrangement of the vowels and consonants, there are actually a couple different places where you can put this on the board and not expose a vowel on the double letter score. So this would be one of them, but you could also see putting the A on the star, for example. That would also accomplish the same objective. Maybe that's kind of fun because it lets you play transitory and things like that. But, this is certainly as reasonable a position as any for John.
Yep, no, I like that too, because with the other placement of transit, the S hook is a little bit more damaging because it would be in the line with the double word score and the triple letter score. And Sam with absolute dreck on his rack, a Q, 2 U's, a W, and he makes, I think, about as good a play as you're going to possibly be able to make from that rack with Aquay. And this just goes to show you guys how bad his rack is. He got rid of a lot of dreck, and he still has dreck. He still has UW, which is one of the most notorious 2-letter tiles combos in Scrabble. And John is going to be bingoing again.
Wow. Yeah. I would be surprised if he's got actually 2 options that allow him to bingo here through the
and
R
look at
and
what
A
Sam
of
just
transit.
threw. Oh my gosh, that's terrible.
Oh,
wow.
Brutal. Yeah. Tale of 2.
Sometimes it goes like that.
Yeah. I mean, this is tale of 2 starts for these 2 players. I don't know if we jinxed it, Mac, when we're saying not every Scrabble game lets us have that high drama that we've been experiencing on a game in, game out basis. Part of the reason why is sometimes you see starts like this where one player draws transit and then has 2 other high probability 8-letter words through either the R or A, and the other one's got UUWII. So that's how it goes sometimes, but it's still early. And I guess the best thing you can say is that these 2 bingos for John, they actually don't score super much. It's not like he's scoring 90 points per bingo. It's only in the mid 60s. So Sam isn't going to be down by, 180 points or anything like that. He's going to be down by, 100-ish. That's not great, but it's not insurmountable.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and if you think about it, John also went first. So after Sam's next play, he's going to probably be down about 60 points with a bad lead, which is not a good situation. But the way to think about this, if you're Sam, to try to stay positive is, yeah, the first 2 turns sucked for you, right? And they were really good for your opponent. But because that happened, it might be the reverse. Maybe you'll draw into a bingo and John is going to start drawing all the dreck next. I mean, we've seen that happen many times in high-level games on stream before. So, yeah, John is lined up in Troit's, the other choice being Ostinati. Both of them score 66. I don't see a materially large difference between either of them. Maybe a slight preference for Ostinati, actually, because Introit's does open 2 double lines with that I and that T, whereas Ostinati doesn't, but I don't think it's a huge difference.
Yeah, it seems very, very close between those two plays. Very difficult to suss out. Two plays that score 66. It does look like Ostinati yields a fair number more points per turn than Introits. That's interesting to think about why that would be. I guess it's probably because anytime your opponent has a high scoring tile, Ostinati actually would put an S right here. So maybe you're just giving up a lot of good plays there. Other than that, but that's not even that bad of an outcome, because anytime your opponent responds with a high scoring play in this spot, you're going to get to respond to the triple afterwards. So it's not even that bad.
No, John has oystered through the S. This, oh boy.
Yikes. Yeah, so John is off to the races here. Play of Wiki for Sam.
I think about as good a play as he could have made with that rack. Yeah. He scores about 30 points with Wiki, but he still has 2 U's on his rack, and things are still not looking great for him over there.
Oh, I thought that F was an A and that he had uranium on his track, but apparently.
Oh, that would have been nice.
I'm not even sure if that fits anywhere. But yeah, I guess it's possible. I can't imagine John missing the bingo of oystered. Also, he has storied through this spot as well. So either one of those. Amazingly, he also has a 9-letter word.
2 Toyers. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah. So that would be quite the style points. I don't think that this play has really anything special to offer compared to the plays through the S. Sorry for my chicken scratch on that one, but hopefully you can see where the 9-letter word would go. I expect John to see this 3rd straight bingo to start the game, and that's a rough one for Sam. He hasn't really done anything to warrant this with that Scrabble for you.
Yeah, no, he absolutely hasn't. Like I said, I think both of his first 2 plays, considering how bad his tiles were, having 63 points after 2 plays is not a bad thing. And this might unfortunately just be one of those games where, after 4 turns, the game is more or less over. And yeah, it's interesting to think about the 9, which is obviously a lot harder to see than the 8s. It does score 2 more points, as has been pointed out in the chat. So that is something. It does give back some overlaps on the triple on the bottom, though. So I could kind of see either way. It also could draw a challenge if John were to see it and be confident, because another past tense of tutoyer is just tutoyed, which is kind of weird. So if Sam knows that, he might think tutoyered is not good. But in any case, John goes with storied, which is totally reasonable.
I wonder if this word's going to get challenged. If Sam has any doubt. Okay, that's good. That's good for him because it is valid. But I just felt like maybe if you see the score getting so far out of reach, like 195 to 63, when you have 2 U's on your rack, there's really not much you can do. Maybe he would have considered challenging it if he had any doubt at all, but he doesn't, which is a good choice because it is valid.
Finally, a bad rack for John here. He has drawn 7 consonants. So if you're Sam here, it looks like he's got enough from the E and story lined up, which does at least finally shed one of his U's. I guess I shouldn't say finally. He did already shed one with Aquay, but it sheds another one of his U's. Does he not have a 5 under the E in Aquay? Maybe not.
Amazingly, it doesn't appear that he does. If he did have a 5-letter word starting with F, this would clearly be a great spot to play it. But shockingly, it just doesn't seem like he somehow has one, which is really a shame. I would say I do like enough. Maybe a slightly better play in that spot would be femur. The nice thing about it is that are maybe a little more likely to yield a bingo that Sam desperately needs in that spot. And now he has, well, again, he's so close. He doesn't quite have uranium again, but manubria. I'm not sure if he actually has anything that will play on this board that he desperately needs.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it at the moment. And I don't think, John does have an L, but he's probably not going to get much help by way of floaters. I expect we could see something like Shay through the E, Chez, which Now, the drawback of that play, though, if you're John, is that it does give back some easy 40 or 50-point plays from the Z, which both score well and also open the board. So that is one drawback. That being said, it does block the board very nicely for immediate bingos. It blocks the E, which is a great floater, also sevens either above or below ut. So that's an option. He could also go with Zilch maybe through the I and Introits, which does score a bit less, but shed an extra consonant. Another interesting thing, he could think about is holding the Z, because right now he has za above aqua, and if he can get a vowel, and that's exactly what he's going to do. I actually like this to try to go for a big Z bomb. What do you think of this play, Will?
Yeah, it looks really good. You can not only draw an A for za, you can draw an O and then some other stuff potentially. If you draw Zone or Zori or any of that stuff. So all makes a lot of sense to me. I like it. I'm just wondering, is there any other option? What's that? Sorry.
Oh, he drew AES blank.
Okay, I thought you were saying "oi" as a draw that he could have, not an actual exclamation.
No.
But you're saying "oi."
Oh boy! So things are not getting better. For
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, he's drawn extremely well here. So yeah, I like the play of Chirp a lot. Makes a lot of sense keeping that Z. We've seen it a couple times, almost thematically, of keeping the Z sometimes leading to nice outcomes for you. If the Z isn't very good on a particular board position, maybe it's going to get even better on your next turn. In this case, there's already several good Z spots available in this spot right here and here. So the board, you don't need to hope for anything. The board is already phenomenal for the Z. So it makes a lot of sense that John would keep it.
Yeah, I didn't even notice the Zin spot at first, honestly. Yeah, that clearly makes holding the Z the best play. And I'm not sure if John actually has a bingo here. I don't see it immediately, but this is a type of turn where even if he does, he's probably going to be better off just playing za for 60 plus points and holding the blank and the S and forgoing the bingo.
Yeah, I don't think he does have a playable bingo here. So yeah, it's gonna have to. Okay, there we have one of the Z spots is effectively taken out by this play of Maria, which makes sense. I think he left UN. I don't see the N right now.
I think it's just over to I think it's over maybe on the right side of his rack based on that shadow, but he definitely saved UN.
Yeah, I think so. So that seems as good as anything. It's probably slightly better than Mania just because U and N have a little bit better synergy than U and R. And there you go. The beauty of this play, Mac, you don't even give anything back to Sam. It feels like you should at least have to worry about opening the triple, but that's part of the beauty of Chirp is that this play blocks this spot from being that dangerous. So you could play your Z in peace.
Yeah, and man, it just keeps coming here now. John has drawn another S. He is definitely going to be bingoing on his next turn. And Sam, his last tile is still the N. I don't believe there is anything almost jumbler or something. But
yeah, like jump right with an N in there somewhere, I think. Right on camera, maybe.
If the J were a Z instead, he'd have Bruni's M. That would be pretty cool, but of course it's not.
Yeah, what to do here? I mean, there's not a lot. Okay, there we do have that N. It's off. It's back on the camera. Not really sure what to do other than like Jun here. Yeah, this is such an uninspiring play, but I think it's probably the right play just to get the J off and the U off in one go and really just pray that you start drawing bingos early and often. Of course, we know that John has one of the two blank and is absolutely going to be bingoing on his next turn. That's how it goes sometimes. This is, games like this are the reason why the best Scrabble players in the world can sometimes lose to, intermediate level players. It can be a little bit maddening, but I also think it's a cool thing about Scrabble that's possible.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And it's not really through any fault of Sam's. I mean, we're both obviously grandmasters and we've been following along and there hasn't really been much if at all, we'd have done differently if we were Sam. And like you said, this happens, and that's why Nigel Richards, who most of us I think would agree is the greatest Scrabble player of all time, is a win percentage that I think is in the 70s for his whole career. And and Sam just continuing to draw garbage here. This is just brutal. But yeah, I mean, that's the difference, right, between Scrabble and a game like chess, where the better player is still usually going to win, but definitely not always going to win. And that certainly makes it, like you said, definitely a bit frustrating, but also more exciting to watch. And it's always exciting too to give up and coming players the opportunities to beat the big dogs, so to speak. So yeah.
I like it. I do think it's like that perfect balance between a game like poker, where it takes so long for variance to even out sometimes, and a game like chess, where it is just sort of brutal. Like you can go up against somebody that's even moderately better than you, and it's gonna be very difficult for you to take very many games off of that person. So I do like it. I think it's that perfect intermediate balance, which I feel like Scrabble often occupies that sort of status. I really like how information incompleteness manifests itself in Scrabble, going from that beginning of the game where it's complete fog of war to the end of the game where it's very much more chess-like with perfect information. Scrabble really does. I mean, obviously I'm biased, but I really feel like Scrabble kind of has it all in terms of things that make a game great. But I know I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely agree with that. And I think too, obviously it does get frustrating when you're on the receiving end of the bad luck, like Sam certainly is here. I'm sure Sam is not enjoying this game, but Sam's still having a really good, or if Sam is somehow enjoying this game, then all I can say is major props to him. He has a better attitude than I probably would in this situation. But if he's not enjoying this game, then it's totally understandable. And the thing is, like you said, you have to kind of see the bigger picture and realize that if this is happening to you, then it's going to happen for you at some point. And sometimes it takes one game, sometimes it takes 10, but it's going to happen sooner or later. That's just the law of averages. And it's a really awesome game with tons of complex strategy and turns, and you got to just kind of make the most of every play and embrace the complexities of all of the turns as we try to do. But yeah, I mean, John here with, I presume, many available bingos. Does anything stand out to you as best?
Only 2 bingos that score 72 points here. Those would both be through the R of Maria. One of them is Revisals, and the other is Scravels with a blank C. So those would be the highest scoring plays. I don't really feel like any other options are significantly better. I mean, at this score, you almost don't even have to think positionally at all. You can just keep pouring the points on. And it does look like John is going to find one of his 2 higher scoring bingos of Revisals. This seems perfectly fine. I would assume that Scravels is maybe slightly better to avoid placing a letter in a triple lane, but this isn't even that damaging. It's not going to be that easy to do too much with an S in this positioning, especially with the F to kind of obstruct your ability to play further along. So good play for sure by John, and he just continues to roll on and pour the points on in this game.
Yeah, and I actually like Revisals better because, like you said, the S is not useful. And at this point, if John is somehow going to lose this game, it's not going to be because of a 40-point play through the S for Sam. It's going to be because of a massive bingo. And Sam's best spot for a massive bingo is actually that F. And Revisals does block the F. So I think this is actually a better play for John. And yes, Sam here, as has been pointed out by Joey in chat, Jim above Aquay looks like a great play here for about 40 points, I think, making Gut, Jan, and M. Still keeps Brew, which is not a fantastic leave, but at least he scores well and does shed a couple of his consonants. But yeah, no, this is just been pretty brutal to watch, and I'm sure it's as brutal as it is for us to watch. It's even more brutal if you're Sam.
Yeah, it's a really good point with the F. The F is not a great bingo tile in a vacuum, but actually something that I learned when I was like investigating the F and other letters more deeply for some of the YouTube videos I made, the F is actually among 8-letter words that have an F in them. The F is it's like overwhelmingly the first letter of those words much, much more of the time than other letters. So anytime your opponent does have a bingo from the F, it's likely to be a super heavy hitting one there. So I like that point. I hadn't considered it about why revisals might be the better positioning. Anyway, Jim would have been a super stylish play by Sam. Instead, he plays U to the triple, which scores decently well, but I think a slight missed opportunity. Jim would have scored 9 more points and kept his lone vowel. But look at that. He's drawn a bingo in spite of that through this A. I think Big Glamour is going to potentially go down. It seems he's clearly seen it based on the way he's arranged his tiles.
Yeah, and that's kind of like what we were talking about before. That can be another thing about Scrabble that can be either frustrating or rewarding. Is sometimes you get rewarded for a suboptimal play, and sometimes you get punished for an optimal play. And in this case, I think the general consensus would be that U was a suboptimal play for Sam. Jim would have been better, but it does look like he is going to get rewarded, because I don't think actually, I take back what I said.
Oh, brutal.
That is, man, that's just got to be so rough if you're Sam. It's like you've had such a rough game. You finally draw this natural bingo without an S or anything, and then John just blocks it. Like it's just one of those games where nothing's going your way. But what Sam's got to keep in mind is, like, it feels like so much has gone wrong this game, but at the end of the day, it's still just going to be one loss, right? Like whether you lose a game like this or lose a game that doesn't feel so bad, it can really, you can kind of process it differently. But at the end of the day, it's one loss on the scoreboard, and he's got to just keep that in mind and try to come back and hopefully draw a little bit better in his next game. But that's really all there is to say.
Yeah, agreed. I do want to give John props for that play. With that rack of whatever, 4 E's and 2 D's and a C, not great letters, but he found a way to score 27 points in that spot. A kind of a deceptively large score there. You wouldn't think it would get so many, but you're getting a bunch of letters that score more than 1 point, and then you're getting a little bonus right here, another bonus for DE. So it actually racks up points to a surprising degree. And yes, it does block the A quite a bit, makes it much more difficult to play exactly the sort of words that Sam has on his rack. So good job by John to lock in even more spread there. And a good comment that technically DEC blank DE could be decade, decide, or decode. So maybe John played revosals or revasals on his previous turn, Mac. What do you think?
I mean, I don't want to completely scoff at it, because I'm sure he didn't intentionally, but you do see misdesignations of blanks. I know I've told people this story. Will and I had a famous instance of this once many years ago, where he played D blank ALINGS, and I just assumed the blank was an E for dealings without looking at the slip, and bombed an X next to it. And I thought I was making EX, and he challenged it off the board because the blank was actually an I, and he'd specifically made it an I to avoid that possibility. So these things happen. Do I think it's likely? No, but I guess you never know. And I like this play by Sam here, though. You're down 200 points. You got to take some chances. The B could potentially be tough for John to block, and maybe Sam draws the blank and pulls some sort of triple. You never know. I like it, though.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta at least go for it. Obviously, his odds are next to none, but why not give it a shot, right? What if John plays a phony here and you draw a triple? That, I'm not sure I've seen too many examples of that actually happening, but hey, you're here to compete and try to win the game as best you can. And of course, John is not having any of it, and he plays a bed through that spot to block off any chance of some kind of miraculous outcome for Sam. But Sam draws Tea Room. Does this actually do anything for him here, or it's just another source of torment for him in this brutal game?
I think, unfortunately, it is the latter, and he sees it, and yeah, it's just not going to go down here. I mean, there really aren't all that many places to bingo on this board. It's almost impossible to play a 7, and the floaters are just not in good spots. The U and the F, and like you were saying, well, the F is not an easy tile to bingo through, especially late in a word. The U is also not a great tile, and I's and A's are tough late in the word on the right. So I don't know. I would maybe do something like Mo and Joe to try to set up an emo hook. But at this point, it's kind of hard to, if you're Sam, just mentally to not be deflated and stop caring. Another option is OM above Aqua. I maybe like that a little better to try to set up Oma over there and out. I don't know. It's a pretty bad position to be in.
Yeah, that seems all right. I mean, the idea here is that you've got nice hooking ability to come back and maybe play a 7. There really is no spot on this board whatsoever to play a 7 outside of very specific overlaps right here. Other than that, it's just not possible. There's no space for it. But I do think playing Ohm right here makes it a little more realistic. Maybe you can get something that fits just right. Other than that, Mac pointed out just playing MO to try to set up your E hook for emo. We've already seen, actually, Mac, in the game we saw from John, he actually had outrave as a bingo on his rack, but he missed the emo hook to EM on the board. So I think he's going to be conditioned now to spot that hook pretty easily.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, it was a fairly recent addition, and John has been playing for a very, very long time. And, you know, in the old days, you used to think of MO as one of those unhookable 2s in the front. So that adjustment is hard. And I had another thought here, too. Sam could actually play Tom, setting up the case A for Adam, which looks even stronger because with Mo, there are several E's left. And Tom does keep a more Val-heavy leave, but the pool is fairly well balanced, and that would be a little bit tougher, I think, for John to deal with.
Yeah, you could see no A's, I should say, remaining. So that's kind of cool. We saw Josh Sokol execute that strategy with the Collins word GUE. Unfortunately, there is not likely to be a dramatic Sam Hollington Scrabble history episode based off of this game with him playing Tom and playing Adam, even if he were to draw something nice. But that would be a cool idea. And I would add, though, when you're down by a lot of points like this, that's where you can kind of get creative with some of these types of plays where you might be more willing to go for it. And is he going to play Moat? I thought maybe he would play Motor here. He's played Moat, maybe hoping to draw another E and play Emote in that spot, but also getting a bunch more points for the K here. Seems as good as anything else, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's fine. At the end of the day, Sam's winning percentage is, I think, straight zeros here if you run this through any engine, so it doesn't really matter too much. Generally speaking, if you can set up a hook you do have, it's a little bit better, but he also does get some more points, and he does rate draw an E. There were a bunch of E's left, and yeah, John is not going to have a whole lot to do there with this on his rack. I would probably leave it and just play Guile through the L on the bottom to take out some scoring plays down there, or trade like John is doing. Also totally a reasonable option.
He's decided to trade. Seems reasonable. And what do we see here? Another
plays. So hopefully he finds that.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So that's, I think, definitely findable. Over lane right here. That would be nice. Nice consolation for Sam. Of course, we know it's just a little bit too late. And there's a second blank onto John's rack as well, by the way.
I believe, speaking of overwords, I think over foul is good, right? And that would play for John through the U and enough for a lot.
Oh, wow. Nice. So, I mean, that's a tough one to know for sure to be good, but it is valid. So over foul for John with a blank V through this U is what Mac is mentioning. So, yeah, I'll be curious to see whether John feels confident enough in that word. It's sometimes difficult to keep straight which adjectives can you have over or out, which verbs can you outperform somebody at. But yeah, maybe he'll spot that. It'll be a nice play on his part. So we haven't seen over lane yet. There we go.
All right, good job, Sam, here to get his bingo down. So yeah, props to him. It's not going to be enough to win the game, but it's a bingo he should find at his level, and he does find it. So it's good to see that he's still staying in this game and trying to cut spread as much as he can, because he's still right in the thick of things here, and that definitely could matter.
even if we don't see overfoul, I do think we're going to see floorers through this R, just because you would simply need to make the blank an S, which is a pretty logical. That's probably your first instinct. Anytime you have a blank, well, can I make it an S? All those really useful tiles that you would like to have as natural tiles, not the blank, the S, the E, all of that stuff. So I do expect that John will find floorers at a minimum. Whether he finds overfoul, we'll see. It would be a 16-point improvement for him because it's going to get the F on the triple letter score and the entire thing on the double word score. Looks like he might be getting ready to play re-floors, which actually is not valid. He might be getting that conflated with re-floods.
Yeah, there's a bunch of words in that vein that should feel like they should be good in art. Another one that always shocks me when I relearn that it's not a word is the simple foolers. Another
Oh
one
yeah, that's a classic. Foolers. Yes,
foolery is
absolutely.
good, but not foolers, which is very bizarre. Foolers and failers. I don't know why they're just speaking of F's. There seem to be a lot of words that start with F that you'd normally think if you didn't know should definitely be a word, but they just aren't words.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Are floors and overfoul John's only playable bingos here?
Yes, those are the two. So that's it. And you can see Sam setting up the possibility of an 8-letter word. Ibogaine doesn't seem to fit anywhere on this board anywhere, but good on him to spot that. He's not going to get an A to play that word, but it's always nice to recognize to see your possibilities.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's always good whenever you're, it's important too in Scrabble because 25 minutes is a lot of time, but it's not a ton of time. To whenever you have a decent enough rack, think on your opponent's time to see think about what they could give you and just sort of be ready so you don't have to spend time looking on your own turn. And yeah, John does indeed play floors, which is overfoul, like you said, with the blank V, tricky to see and also probably even trickier to be sure of. So definitely understandable here. And I thought Sam was thinking about challenging for a second there, but it looks like John is drawing, so never mind.
Yeah, I think he's just going to go ahead with it, and we'll see. John's likely to draw a lot of the junk that he just threw back into the bag on the previous turn. He has drawn the X, and I wonder what that last... Oh, there is no last letter. There were 6 tiles in the bag. Yeah, so he's not going to get some kind of help that lets him... I was just wondering, could he possibly play an EX play here? But it doesn't look like he has the right letters. So we will just play out this end game. I don't imagine that Sam is going to think super hard about this. It's an exercise for the audience. You guys can try to figure out what should Sam play. What he will play is obviously up to him, but that's always the challenge of an end game, is to try to tease it out. There always is a technically correct answer. Of course, you have to adjust that answer based on what you expect your opponent to play. But endgame puzzles, I really feel like that is my weak point as a player, Mac, and that I can do it, but I just need so much time on the clock. It's such a challenge to tease out these sequences at the end.
Yeah, it really can be. And I think what makes them so... it's funny because on one hand, you'd think it would be easier because unlike earlier in the game where there's so much uncertainty, like you said, there's no uncertainty in an endgame. You know exactly what you have and exactly what your opponent has. So you can theoretically figure out all of the possible situations. But on the other hand, you kind of are forced to calculate, which is not something you can really ever do in Scrabble, unlike a game such as chess, because of all the randomness and just having to do that. And also sometimes plan very unconventional sequences where either you're sticking your opponent with something or just the notion of leave and points and equity that you'd see earlier in the game just completely goes out the window. And it's all about trying to, say, go out in 2 and look at your opponent's plays. So it's going to be really hard. I'm liking Gibson through the S and Revisals here for 36, possibly, or Geib down the G column next to Moat, making several overlaps of me, Job, and Ute.
Yeah, so Gibson appears to be the best, which is, I don't want to say ironic, but maybe fitting, given the late, great, amazing Scrabble legend David Gibson. So this would be technically the best starting play for Sam, playing for 36 points and leaving EI on his rack, which is pretty flexible. There's no way he's not going out on his next turn with that. I am curious to see what happens if he plays, as you suggested, of like jibe up here. That scores very well. Is there some really good play? I feel like probably the best plays for the X are something like this, like XI or just 6 in the corner. So that's probably why Gibson does very well. It makes it very difficult for Sam to get a similar number of points outside of, I guess, just XI up here, which then he has to keep a whole bunch of, clunky. John does have to keep a whole bunch of clunky tiles on his rack after Sam goes out. So something like that is probably what is the quote unquote optimal sequence here. But as you said, as you alluded to earlier, Mac, it's very difficult in Sam's shoes to really care about optimizing this end game. You mostly just want to get to the finish line and hope the next game goes a little better than this one.
Yeah, for sure. I think everything you said is totally on point there, Will. And yeah, I think probably Gibson is a little better. It does block 6 and XI. XI in the top right is only 2 less, so I don't think that's the issue so much. I think it's just that IE is a little bit more flexible to go out with. He can play right through the R and chirp and the T and storied for 12, and I don't see a great place to go out with ION, which looks like he's going to be keeping after Gaib. So that's probably it's probably only a matter of a couple points here and there, but as we've seen, that can matter. I mean, I know Nigel Richards has won nationals by under 50 spread points, I believe, twice. I came in second by 12 spread points in the tournament in Virginia just last year. Like, these little details do matter, so it is important as much as you can. Which, as you said, Will, it's a lot easier said than done when you're losing by 200. You just want to move on to the last game already, but it's still important to get this right as much as you can, because sometimes those couple of spread points are going to make the difference.
Yeah, I mean, how I try to think of it is I try to remember that, yes, obviously you go to these tournaments trying to win and have your best performance, but actually what I try to keep in mind is that actually even in games like this, where the score is so far out of reach for one player or the other, you can still get really interesting endgame puzzles that arise that way. Like, there can still be really fun endgames to solve, despite the fact that they have absolutely no impact on who wins or loses the game. So I try to embrace that aspect of it and remember that, like, what draws us to play these tournaments to begin with is the challenge of solving a puzzle on each and every turn. I guess maybe some of us like the idea of crushing our foes and leaving them bloodied and battered, beneath our boot. But actually, I don't really care about, the winning and losing, all that stuff. Of course it's there, but I actually feel like it's not a healthy attitude. I just think really embracing the puzzle solving aspect of each turn is the best way to get through playing this game with your mindset intact and your happiness intact.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously it's a lot easier said than done, right? Depending on the circumstances. It's very easy to feel that way when you're undefeated in the tournament and then you lose a couple games, and it's easy to lose sight of that. So yeah, it's definitely a game where there's a lot of, no matter how good you are, no matter who you're playing, it's a game where there's inherently going to be a lot of ups and a lot of downs. And yeah, being able to kind of just deal with that, and I think, like you said, just sort of recenter yourself around what you like about the game, which is the fact that it's every turn is really interesting, especially in the end game, regardless of what the score is. And just being able to have that attitude is really important, and something that I think a lot of us really do still struggle with. But I know I've certainly struggled with it, and I've gotten, I think, better about it over the years. But it's certainly still a challenge, and I think will continue to be in some capacity, just because at the end of the day, I do we try to focus on the aspects that we enjoy and are really cool about the game, but we do still work competitive and we take it seriously, and we all don't enjoy losing, and it's hard to have a good time if you're having a really bad tournament. It just is.
No question. Yeah, I mean it's easy to say, but we are all human beings after all. So yeah, it's more of an aspirational thing than something that I could say that I've mastered or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's something to aspire to have that level of just embracing each move as something to solve. But there's no question that we are human beings. It sucks when things are going horribly wrong in these tournaments. I can definitely remember many an occasion where I was just sitting, and as soon as a game completed, I was running off to my computer to analyze it and find out how could I have messed this one up, etc. So it's tough, no question about it. But I think with that mentally challenging aspect, there are just so many other amazing things about the game to hang your hat on that it keeps us coming back. So
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, what should Sam do? I guess just iron through the R of storied is the best that he can do. I'm sure looks like he's kind of he doesn't seem to be too perturbed by the way this game has gone. He's just playing it out. Looks pretty stoic. Yeah, I'm going to assume we probably don't need a super in-depth interview on this one. Maybe we'll take a short break before we get to our final round of the day, which I believe is round 11. Do you have any burning questions, Mac, that you feel like we have to ask the players here?
Honestly, not really too much. Yeah. I think they both played a pretty good game, and the tiles, unfortunately, I think just didn't really give Sam much of a chance. But I don't want to dwell on that too much. I do still want to give John his props. Obviously, he still found 3 bingos to open the game and played really solidly overall. So yeah, I mean, definitely a well-deserved win for John. But I mean, I think because compared to the first 2 games, there weren't as many strategically fascinating decisions, just because the game was a bit lopsided by the time we got to the more meaty part of the game towards the middle and end. So yeah, I mean, I'd be happy to chat briefly, but I don't think there are any urgent questions.
Yeah, I concur. So I think maybe what we'll do, I just, I don't even know. I guess the chirp play was probably interesting enough if we wanted to break it down, but I don't even think we have to do that. It was already sort of out of reach. But that was actually a legitimately really nice play by John to keep that Z when he could have played it and gun for the big Z spot and really manufacture another bingo type score for himself. Other than that, what can you say? Just how it goes sometimes. So I think what we'll do for now is take the quickest break. I think it's only going to be a couple minutes before we come back with our final round of day 2 here at Montreal Scrabblefest 2024, brought to you by Let's Play Scrabble and WGPO. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody, we're back. I'm so sorry to interrupt that absolutely epic bop that we are now hearing during the breaks on the Let's Play Scrabble YouTube channel during these live streams. But we are mere moments away from our final round of the day, and it is going to be a Montreal battle. Of course, how fitting at Montreal Scrabblefest, but two of Montreal's finest players, 2022 North American champion Michael Fagan, and I think it was 2015 runner-up Jason Lee coming in second in his top finish at the North American Championship. So two players with a very strong pedigree. Mac, I'm excited for this one for sure.
Yeah, no, I think not too much to add to what you said there. Well, I think the players' histories and results speak for themselves. It should be a really exciting game. I know I've played both Jason and Michael probably about 20 times a piece at this point in tournaments and had lots of really intense, complicated, fun games against both of them. So yeah, really excited to see this match. I think it's always interesting when you have two players who know each other so well. I'm sure between tournaments and club, these guys have played well over 100 games against each other. And, you know, when you play someone that many times, you really get such a good handle on their strengths and weaknesses. And more than that, because these guys are both really good, they don't have a ton of weaknesses, just their tendencies. And it can be interesting to see how they exploit that. So, yeah, really should be a fun game.
Yeah, Scrabble, when you play the same person on a really high-level opponent that many times, it does start to get really interesting as the layers and layers build on each other. Strategy, adjustments, counter-adjustments, etc. We can cut to the players now seated at the table, and maybe it looks like they probably already exchanged their pleasantries and they're just waiting to get started, which we are happy to let them do. You can see Michael not doing as well in the standings yet. He still has time to make a charge up that ladder, but you can see this is a pivotal game for Jason at 7-3. He is right in the thick of things, needing to win this game to keep pace with the other leaders in his division. So it'll be Michael going first and Jason to respond. And here come those first tiles out of the bag. Let's see what Michael draws.
Let's see. Always a bit of an ominous start when the first tile you pull is a G, but let's see. I thought he had eulogia for a second. He's got eulogio, which is not a word.
Yeah, not quite. This is not the greatest rack to see when you're going first in a game, but I think he should be able to put something or other on the board here that makes him content. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I would love to get rid of that G. I'd love to get rid of the U. It's not possible to achieve all of those goals here.
He could play Logoi as he has lined up. He also could go with Guile, which keeps two O's, which isn't great. He could go with I believe Ghoulie is good, right? Goolie. Could do that.
I mean,
just he could also trade down to EL, which I don't think is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, trading. I had just said that I think he's for sure going to put something on the board, and he has. He's played Logoi, which is a very, along with a lot of the other plays that we're talking about, it's a reasonable choice. Now that I'm thinking about it, I kind of do like the idea of trading. If you're only scoring 14 points, leaving kind of a suboptimal leave, the beginning of the game is a really interesting time to potentially just trade instead. So, yeah. Tough one, though. I don't really find a ton of fault. And he's drawn turtled, has Michael. So definitely that EU leave that he had, filling out with 5 consonants to give him that balance that's potentially going to let him bingo here.
Yeah, totally. Very, very fortuitous indeed that he kept those 2 vowels, because if he had kept EL or something like that, this would have been a pretty crummy rack. So it certainly worked out well. And the real question is it going to play? It will right now, of course, with either TI or IT. But I think Jason is probably going to play Vug with 2 Gs through the G in Logoi. That looks pretty good to me, keeping EERS, which would still allow Turtle to go down. Do you see anything better, Will, for Jason here?
No, I do feel like there's pretty much no way that Jason can inadvertently play something that's going to block all the different positionings of Turtled. I think, the idea of playing something like Vogue seems very natural for Jason, getting rid of the G, the V, the U, and one of the two E's. This does everything that you could possibly want in terms of balancing your rack with ERS. But yeah, Turtled and Voger looks like it should be a very findable spot for Michael, as long as he feels comfortable with Voger. If not, he can still play Turtled here. But I do expect him to put the R at the end of this.
Yeah, likewise, for sure. And I mean, Vogue would have still been interesting for Jason. It's obviously keeping the second E is not great, but it does restrict Michael's options a lot more, which is sometimes a good thing to do when you keep a good lead, because by keeping the board tight when you have a good lead, you sort of try to force your opponent to open it, and then you can, in theory, pounce if you have a good rack. So I still might have actually gone with Vogue there, especially holding an S for Vugs, but obviously hard to find fault with Vogue. And goodness gracious, look at Jason's draw over here.
Yeah, I mean, FP, those two letters do not mesh well together. What are some of the few things that could make them play well together? Well, two blanks definitely would do the trick, along with ERS, the combination that Jason held after Vogue. So we definitely can expect Jason to... He'll have a wealth of options to bingo. Every now and then in positions like these, you will see a really high scoring play that keeps the blanks left over. Like if Jason were to have a 30-point play using the F or something like that, maybe you would see him play that. But either way, definitely expecting bingos to come down for Jason with that incredible draw.
Yeah, definitely. And Michael taking some time here. So I have to wonder if I'm sure he's seen Voger, but I have to wonder if maybe he's not sure of it and is debating whether he wants to risk it. And if you're not sure, it's a very dangerous gamble to take, because the thing is, let's say from Michael's perspective, right, if he bingos with Voger and Turtled and it comes off the board, of course, it won't come off the board because it's a word. But if Michael doesn't know that, then theoretically, Jason could block both of his other potential placements of Turtled, and then Michael would have to deal with this rack, which is really not a great rack without bingoing. So Michael needs to be pretty confident in Voger if he's going to risk it here.
That's a great point. And you could easily see him lack confidence in Voger and play Turtled, let's say here. I'm not sure which of these two, probably the positioning above the I. That would make it much more difficult to hit the D of Turtled. If you play underneath, the D here makes it really easy to play 8-letter words ending in D, whereas if you play Turtled here, it's not so easy to hit the D with an 8. I don't know. Maybe that's not a relevant consideration. Either way, if Michael chooses one of these two spots, that's going to really help Jason, because then he'll play prefers, I should say, for many more points than he would.
Wait, I think Michael was not sure of Turtled.
My God,
oh boy.
That's a shocker.
I think that was the issue. He wasn't unsure of Voger. He was unsure that Turtle was a verb.
Wow, that's
a painful
stunner.
one.
That's a stunner. Depending on what Michael draws, well, we know Michael cannot draw the blanks to bail him out from this play, I should say. But let's see how much he comes to regret not putting the D at the end. And it looks like the answer is going to be quite a lot as he moves very far away from, he drew an S. That's not so bad. Maybe I spoke a little bit too soon. But yeah.
Does Jason have a 9 through the I and the E? Like almost pilferers, but it doesn't quite fit. There's got to be something.
That's a really interesting thought. I do not nominate myself as the finder of the 9s.
If there is one, don't tell me. I want to try to find it. But
yeah. Yeah, I got to say, I am surprised by that. I'm sure Michael will be disappointed to learn that he could have tacked that D on there. But yeah, no sugarcoating that one. That's a pretty huge mistake in that situation. Let's see how quickly Jason can take advantage. He definitely has those two blanks. And I fully expect him to play a bingo somewhere. Where that is, I'm not sure. He could play something starting with F right here, like forceps or something in this spot would be okay. Fraps, maybe he'll consider that. So we'll figure it out. It is challenging with those two blanks, Mac, to come up with all of your options.
It is, and that can be the drawback sometimes to having blanks, especially two of them. And obviously, I say that a little bit in jest because blanks are great tiles, but sometimes it can be almost, I guess, choice paralysis is what you would call it. There's just, like you said, so many different possibilities to consider, and it can often cause players to burn a lot of time because I'm sure Jason sees several bingos here. I'm sure he sees prefers and stuff like that quickly, but I think he has forceps lined up now. He still wants to try to play this precisely and find the best one. And I don't know if there is a 9. I have not seen one yet. I've been thinking while you were talking before. I'll look it up in a second. But
Yeah.
he probably wants to at least spend a little bit of time looking there. But he doesn't want to spend 6 minutes either because it's still early. And the difference is, it would be better, but it wouldn't be so much better than something like Frappes, which he has lined up here now.
Yeah, he's going to play that. The nice thing about this compared to forceps is that it's going to put a real letter, not a blank, on this square. So it actually leads to a couple extra points than a play like forceps would in this spot. So by getting this R here, he scores 77 points. The only bingo that scores more than that is Spoofer, which goes all the way across here and sets up a pretty big S hook kind of needlessly. I think it might also, does that also set up the Y there? Spoofery? Yeah, it does.
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, Spoofer in this spot for 78 points, setting up not only the S, but also the Y as a very big hook. You can just take a 1-point sacrifice with Frappes, and there you go. It's a much more, it doesn't give Michael as much comeback, but it looks like he's going back to forceps, which would be
because of the X bomb, right? Because Frappes puts the A one above the triple letter, so I think it's very reasonable to sacrifice.
True.
He's taking the lead. By the way, I just checked. There are no playable 9s through the INE. Yeah, Pilferers appears to be the closest one, but it misses by 1 spot.
Oh yeah, it is so close, but yeah, not quite. So Jason, I feel like he's spotted most of his relevant options. What's happened here? Okay, yeah, this is going to be forceps. He just has to make sure he designates these blanks the right letters. He's going to be drawing on that slip. Not sure if we have the slip cam. Probably not, I think. I think we're not going to get you guys that. Oh, there it is. Okay, there you go. So the O and the C, that's what we would want to see here. That slip, of course, to alleviate any need for disagreements between the players of this blank, what is this letter? What is that letter? Just to have it on the slip is an easy way to adjudicate that situation. So, all right, over to Michael. Mack. What do we think?
Let's see. So this is one of those racks, as are most racks, right? You've got some good stuff and you've got some bad stuff. Obviously, the S is really good. D, E. He definitely wants to get rid of the J, ideally the B in one of his Ds. My first instinct is definitely just jibed for 30 through the E and forceps. Keeps a great leave, EDS. He's down a bit, but he definitely doesn't need to panic, and I think that's exactly what he's lying down here. He still has a great S hook with Fs on the bottom that's kind of annoying to block. He's got plenty of space above low boy. This looks totally fine to me.
Yeah, it looks nice. Higher scoring play on offer, a word that we saw earlier. I think Annette Oberstad played it of Hefe. You tack the S on and score 45, but that would leave BIDD, which is just nowhere near as flexible as DES. That's going to become a bingo for Michael a huge percentage of the time by comparison. So like that play, we'll see what Michael draws. And meanwhile, Jason he might be able to play the self-descriptive ew somewhere, but other than that, this is not looking great for him.
Yeah, I think needless to say, guys, that Jason will not be bingoing again on this turn. I think it's pretty much ew with 3 E's or trade with a rack like this. And I am struggling to find a spot where Jason can even play ew at all. Do you see anywhere, Will?
I don't, which is frustrating because that's the whole reason we have that word is to dump all kinds of E's and a W somewhere, but the board just doesn't have a space to accommodate that word. So the options that you would consider playing here are something like whoa right here. That scores 22. and it leaves 3 E's and an O, which is absolutely brutal, but maybe 22 points is just enough where you want to give yourself a chance to draw some consonants and maybe you avoid exchanging. If Jason's able to draw 3 consonants here, or even 2, maybe he can avoid exchanging and score something decent, and scoring 22 and then maybe a 25 or 30 point play on his next move. Then he's managed to keep his average per turn roughly what you would want it to be on a turn-by-turn basis. And there you go. That X with 2 vowels, though, Mac. Oof, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's always really tough to know when to exchange and when not to in those kind of situations, because it's close. It's the type of thing where if woe were 12, it wouldn't be close. You would definitely want to exchange. And if woe were 32, it also wouldn't be close. You would definitely want to play it. It's those plays that usually score in the 20 range but keep a dreadful lead that it's tough, because on one hand, it's exactly like you said, or if you feel like you can kind of plod through for 1 or 2 turns and keep scoring 25, then you're keeping your average. On the other hand, an average turn at these guys' level is more like 35 points. So if you trade now and you give yourself a better chance to bingo or quickly build towards a bingo, it can often work better. Honestly, my instinct tells me I would have traded there personally, but I also can't really fault Jason for taking the points.
Yeah, I'm struggling to figure out what I like the best there. I do feel like I might lean towards playing woe as well, and just feeling like at least the vowels that I'm keeping. Obviously, I'm not loving keeping 4 vowels, but at least I'm keeping E's and an O, which are pretty decent to score with. If I'm just able to draw any kind of consonants, I should be able to turn them into a decent score, as opposed to I's and U's or anything like that. And anyway, Jason's going to play axe. This looks like a very solid play. Again, leaving 4 vowels, but this time scoring 35, which is significantly more. And Michael is poised to strike pretty hard, Mac.
Yeah, and see, this is the problem I feel like with playing through sometimes. Axe is absolutely forced there, because now we're getting into the 35-point realm, right? I was saying before, if woe were like over 30, it would be pretty clear. And Jason, like, now he doesn't have a terrible rack, but he's still going to be scoring not that much this turn. I just feel like a lot of the time, if he had traded, he would have, by the time you look 2, 3, 4 turns in advance, he often would have netted more in the positive. But again, very, very hard to say, and it's tough because sometimes it's better to trade, sometimes it's better to play through. And yeah, as for Michael, he's got 2 7s here. He's got Maenads, which he has lined up to play, and also Anadems. I don't see anything better than what he's lying down. Both of these plays are fairly risky. They both give back a lot of counterplay in the bottom left. This one seems slightly harder to, I don't know, actually Anadems maybe seems a little bit harder to overlap now that I think about it with the 2 A's and the N, but it's tough to say. Which do you like better there?
That's tough. I'm just trying to chicken scratch it out and try to figure that out. I feel like they're very, very close. I'm actually trying to suss out which of the 2 would be more overlappable, and I feel like they're very close to even on that score. So in situations like this, that is where I would trust the computer analysis a little bit more so. The computer's going to know a little bit better, and amazingly, your instinct is spot on, Mac. I think that Maenads, maybe the reason that Maenads does a little bit better is they seem to be about even in terms of their ability to offer overlaps, but Maenads gives the extra points for the M. Anytime you do an overlap here, assuming that they're even in their ability to accept 4-letter words or longer under here, you are getting more points for that M than you would if all of the tiles at the edge were worth only 1 point. So that might account for some of the small difference that we're seeing favoring Anadems, which is kind of instructive in a way.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking too is the majority of words, right, especially words that score a lot of points, are going to start with a consonant, not a vowel. And if you think about it, what's going to go after the M, right? Another vowel most likely. So then you'd be going consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant most likely, which is a very, very common ending for high-scoring plays. Look at TH, SH, several others that would go right there. Whereas with Anadems, if the word starts with a consonant, it's a bit tougher to put another consonant after or another vowel, I should say, after the A, right? And then the N. It's just a little bit harder to get that pattern in the exact way you would typically want for a high scoring play. So that's sort of how I would think about it. But yeah, in any case, a great find by Jason here of Idola with 6 overlaps.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. You guys pointed it out in the chat as an option, and I'm really impressed by Jason's find here to spot that underlap. So with all low point tiles and mostly vowels, he's corrected his issue of having too many vowels immediately. Maybe he'll redraw some, but actually it looks like the pool is relatively balanced. He'll probably draw a mix of, some good consonants to go with that E, and he's managed to score 27 points with all those low pointers. So very nicely played there by Jason, and the game is still very much knotted up, and boy, not the best draw for Jason, but not the worst. It looks like he'll be able to play off his B and Y somewhere or other and keep a really good bingo leave. And the nice thing is the D is actually a very nice tile here, because you've got a bingo lane that's much better for the D than other suffixes like the R or the S, which don't play in that spot. So we'll see what he's able to do. But meanwhile, it's back to Michael. I wonder what he's going to do here, Mac.
I see, I'm not sure it's correct, but I see a really stylish play on row 11. That would be making Kefs. He can play Kyanite through the disconnected I and E, which is a pretty healthy number of points. The reason I don't love it is because it keeps 2 I's, but it might be enough.
Well, what about just Kyanite there if he wants to keep?
Oh, there you go. Yep, that's much better. It is 6 fewer points, but I mean, IY is still not great, but it's, I think, better enough.
It's not great either. But great spot. Damn, this would be next level to spot either of those plays through the IE on the board. I think especially so because with the 2 I's on Michael's rack, he's not as likely, in my opinion, to be thinking about trying to play through an I on the board. I think a much more sort of natural move would be something like Gink right here, maybe making Oik, which looks like a pretty solid play for him. Something like that seems a little bit more findable, but man, I'd love to see him find one of those plays through the I and E of Jibe and Feast.
Yeah, for sure. It's a little bit tricky because the K and the Y are really good together for scoring, but there are just a lot of plays that score pretty well but don't get rid of an I. Like you can also play above the OI with something like K. You can play next to Axe, but yeah, there's just not a lot of great options that get rid of IKY, which are sort of the 3 tiles here. Like I always try to think about like what are the tiles you'd want to get rid of if you could help it. Like one way you can think about leaves is if you had a free exchange, right? Like what would you get rid of? And here it would probably be IKY. And there's just no good way. I don't see anywhere to play Inky. I guess you could play it with Ya, but you're giving up way too many points. And yeah, there just aren't a lot of other great options. So I think, yeah, I'm not sure between Knight and Kyanite it's close because IY is definitely better than II, but it's still not ideal, and Kyanite is 6 more points. But either way, one of those 2 I think has to be optimal if Michael is able to find it.
Yeah, just for the points alone are so much better than anything else on offer here. So yeah, that's the spot, but there are some solid plays elsewhere. It looks like he's getting ready to play KAY. Something to note, if he is going to play KAY right here, that makes a very nice O hook. That we could see that. We know Jason does not have an O, so there are 4 lurking. So that is something to consider. That does look like it's going to be Michael's play here. That O hook could definitely loom large at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess another thing to think about, how many I's are left? There's still 4 I's left from Michael's perspective. So yeah, this definitely does run, all these plays do run the risk of triplicating the I's, which is really something you don't want to do. It's funny because I's are individually are not bad. In fact, they can actually be really good for bingoing, but unlike so many of the other vowels like A's, E's, and O's, when they get duplicated or especially triplicated, they become so bad very quickly. But thankfully, Michael, well, he hasn't managed to avoid that, but he draws a U and a Z. So if he were to get an E for Unitizer, then this would be very good for him. But will he?
Seems like the E might come out into space here with Bade, but it's not going to be in the correct spot. So Bade, if that were just a little bit further down, then we might see Unitizer. But as it is, there is no space for that. That's a nice play by Jason, a very defensive play, kind of cutting off this lane that I was suggesting maybe he would try to get an ED bingo together for that spot. But actually now he's made a very defensive play. Not only is it going to restrict Michael, it'll restrict him as well, depending on what he draws. But I think that is in keeping with Jason's general play style. And let's see, it looks like, Ritz is going to score very, very well here.
Yeah, and that's definitely the right play for Michael. It does obviously give back some counterplay to the Z on the right, but there's no guarantee that Jason's going to have something there. And it's just so many more points than his next best option. And I wouldn't be shocked to see Ritz to the Z and Ritz here, because I don't know what else Jason actually has through that Z. So that's an option. Oh, actually, I love it because it sets up Cot for like 50 on the next turn.
Wow, that's sneaky. So
and Michael has drawn absolute trash. Wow, look at that.
Yeah, terrible. So the crazy thing is, here Mac, here's another idea. What if Jason plays waiter right here?
Oh, going for QI. Or yeah. Or
now, obviously, if he doesn't hit this, then it doesn't do anything to block Ritz. If he hits it, it's not even that impactful. I'm just throwing it out there as kind of a funny option that I don't think most human beings would play. I think Ritz, it's either Ritz trying to set up your Q. So again, if Ritz is the play here, you have a nice way to come back with QA in this spot. Or if he wants to dump that Q right now, the nice thing about QAT now is you keep a much better leave. Let's say Michael plays through the Z. If he can play through the Z, he's likely to. But what if you're Jason and you draw a bingo ending in ER? That's definitely still going to play, and you really don't have any kind of upside that high after Ritz, right? Like you're pretty much guaranteeing that the best you can do in most cases is play your Q here. So
you still have the W to deal with after, which is not great.
It's really close. I do think I kind of like the upside of playing Cat first and hoping for a situation exactly like this where Michael just cannot do anything through the Z. Michael's in a real bind right now. Jason's draw
isn't going to be able to do anything either. Another option too that I actually thought of right around the same time as Billy Nakamura pointed it out in the chat is Jason could have played Cot to the T and Ritz first, holding Ritz for his next turn as well, sort of flipping the order, but keeping a little bit of a better leave with right that has more potential to improve than Ritz does, where, like you said, pretty much all you're hoping for is Cot, which could potentially be blocked. So a lot of interesting options to consider for Jason on that turn. I'm still not entirely sure which I like the best.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So Cat here sort of making it impossible to do very much to the Z unless you have very, very specific tiles. In fact, this really cuts down on a huge percentage of the things that Michael could have through that Z. The
and
thing
Jason
that I hate
too. So yeah, it really does.
The thing that I hate, I love keeping a much better leave. So Jason's leave after QAT would just be the regular word right, WRITE. The thing I hate about this play is that you now obstruct the easiest place for you to get a 7-letter word down. Like, yes, you might have a better leave, but you've just crippled the best spot where you could possibly use it. So not to say that Cat there is wrong. I'm not suggesting that. I think it's absolutely a viable option. It's a great way to really restrict Michael's options. And then obviously you set up an even heavier hitting Ritz on the next turn a lot of the time. But yeah, so Michael opts to exchange. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe he exchanged everything.
I think he traded 7, which I can't argue with. His rack was 3 N's, 2 U's, an O, and an I. There's not a lot of good stuff there. And I think I like getting, you could consider IN, but the thing is with NID not being a word, I think Michael, that's the biggest spot on this board right now, right? Because I guess besides the Z, And Michael really wants to get some tiles that can go in front of the ID so he can maybe score or ideally even bingo over there. So I do agree in this case with his decision to trade 7.
Yeah, makes sense. He now has Fizz as a possible option, and Jason is having none of it. He does not want to let that Z stay open, and the timing of that is impeccable because he would have gotten hit really hard with PHIZ into that spot. Maybe there's something even better than that, but that's just what appears to me right off the
Michael
bat.
is going to score a lot with Colin on row 2, making Owl, Liar.
Ooh. Very nice. That's not the easiest thing to see. So first he has to see it and then realize that he has it. There isn't really any overlap. Well, I mean, there are other plays that overlap. One of them, like hip, right? He could play hip
really
here.
Careful,
This would be terrifying because now you have the big S hook for Shire. Colin, Mack's suggestion here would be right here. This is perfect for Michael because it scores even better and the C restricts all counterplay for Jason. So that is the star play here without question. If Michael is able to see it, it looks like he's evaluating hip, Mack, which is a huge risk, but shockingly, Jason will not be able to do much about it.
Yeah, that's are these scores up to date? So is Jason up 10 points?
They are, yeah.
Yeah, this is tough. So if you don't see, I mean, Colin is definitely best by a mile because that would put Michael up about 40, I think, on a pretty dead board where he keeps the very powerful PH combo for scoring. If he plays hip, he does take a little bit of a lead. But yeah, that S hook on Shire, because what's so terrifying about it is it's almost impossible to block because there's no other hook.
Is he considering playing this?
That is not a word, right?
It's not a word. Yeah, so there are words like that, like CHOPIN, Chopin, I guess. I'm sure that's not how you say that. This is a word and it takes an E hook, but the word that he has spelled out, you can put an E. Choline is a word, but you cannot drop the E off. So let's hope that he's not conflating these words. All he would have to do is just take that H out of the equation and he would have it. He would have that perfect solution to this play. If he plays this, he's going to regret it bitterly. As Jason, I definitely expect him to challenge that off for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that would be almost 60 points. So Jason has very, very strong word knowledge. I expect, circumstances aside, Jason would just know that was not a word, but it would sort of be forcing Jason's hand, too. Jason has a pretty bad rack for this position. He doesn't have a bingo. He doesn't have any scoring tiles. And that would put Jason in a bad enough spot where I think he would feel more or less compelled to challenge. So I would be very, very surprised if this stays on the board, if Michael does play, which, like you said, hopefully he won't, and he'll just think to get rid of the H and play Colin. But yeah, it would be very interesting if he does play hip to see how that affects how these players approach the game. That would make it a very much a race for the 2 S's unseen for Shire for really, I think, the rest of the game.
Yeah, that would just be crazy. Jason would have no way of really dealing with that S hook, but of course, Michael would not have one of his own. I mean, obviously, he would have a decent chance of drawing one of the 2 S's that are in the bag. But if Michael doesn't draw that S, then it's just going to be a crazy race to get there. Wow. And here comes the race. So hip is the play. Wow. In the absence of Colin, this is a really strong play just for the score alone. It scores 38 points. You almost have to take the risk. But Colin just outperforms this play significantly in a little bit extra points and most importantly on defense, not giving up that big S hook.
No 7s, but he's drawn an S.
Oh man,
there's no 7s in there, are there? I don't think so.
Uncoils.
Never mind. Wow, I saw that right. Wow, that's crazy.
So, uncoils. Getting set to, and Jason just has no recourse here, and he's gonna get it. I do think Michael's gonna see uncoils. I have to imagine a nice play of Yogin. Is he getting? Oh, Jason's reconsidering. I wonder. There's like no recourse for him to block this, but
You play
man,
Hirer, that's it.
I know that's all you could do is just play Hirer. That's not worth playing. That's just not it's too passive of a play.
Jason's down. He can't, and he keeps a crappy lead. He just can't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
if Jason were up 60 points, then it would actually probably be the right play. But being that he would still be down 20 and keeping a bad lead, yeah, you just can't do that. So no, Jason did nothing wrong here, but unfortunately, he's going to get burned. Wow, what a crazy sequence of events here. I mean, Jason, I'm sure now is going to be thinking Michael had the S. He'll probably be shocked to learn he didn't.
Yeah, it's not going to feel good to realize he didn't have an S there.
No, Jason draws the other S with 5 vowels.
Yeah, it's just in that regard. Gotta say, I mean, Hip is, I wouldn't say it's better than Colin, but at least it's still one of the better plays there. And of course, you always do have a chance that your opponent might not have an S and you draw one first. So this is always like that was always on the table as a possibility after uncoils. But man, it's that's a tough one for Jason for sure when he sees how this game will unfold at some point.
Yeah, for sure. And this is going to be interesting to see, though, how the next 2 turns play out, because Michael has drawn 7 consonants. Oh, there are only 4 in the bag now. Okay. So Jason is looking at, CHMNNNORTUV, which is pretty dreadful. The problem is he's down enough that he's going to need to not only bingo, but probably bingo for a lot, and also try to catch Michael with some stuff on his rack. And there's just no good way for Jason to score any points now because he has all 1-pointers. I think he's looking at OE and Hefe, inserting the E between the J and the FE.
That's a nice spot to dump those 2 letters for sure.
He also has to worry about Michael scoring a lot on the 2-row with something like Munch and O, which would be over 50 points and easily put this game out of reach. So maybe I think Jason needs to do that and more or less hope that Michael has no vowels, which he does, but he would still have plays like HM or NTH there. But I mean, I'm just not really seeing any other options for Jason here.
Yeah, pretty brutal. As this game winds down, just want to thank everybody for watching. We're at a nice number of concurrent viewers here. Thanks, everybody, for coming along with our coverage today. We are in our final round of the day. So if you have been enjoying the coverage today, very simple way to show your appreciation. Clicking that like button on this video. It helps the algorithm, helps out the Let's Play Scrabble YouTube channel, which I might add, if you are not currently subscribed, definitely recommend it. Want to support Let's Play Scrabble as they continue to bring really good live streaming Scrabble experiences, not only for the players in attendance at their tournaments, but for all of us to enjoy it from afar. Easy way to show appreciation. So I'm clicking that button. Normally I make some kind of silly joke about it, but I'm going to do a sincere one this time and not make it a gag on my part. So there you go.
I believe I've already clicked that button many months ago, but couldn't hurt to click it again. But yeah, no, absolutely. Actually, not, because then I think that would unsubscribe me. I'd have to click it I'd have to get an even number of more times if I'm going to click it.
Yes. If you're already subscribed, click the button twice. And if you're not subscribed, click it once. No, I'm just kidding. You can probably just not click it at all if you're already subscribed. So, yeah. But yeah, it's always, who knows, maybe spam clicking it one way or another. I'm one of the few, the people that actually have the notification bells on because I don't want to miss it when Let's Play Scrabble uploads something new. So if you want to level up to the Will Anderson level of engagement, what can you say? Muffin with Tentacles says, nice work. I've been watching all day. I presume Muffin has been crushing it in the Collins division as a player. We'll check in on the standings after this, but that's funny that he would say that. He's been watching all day because he's obviously playing. So yeah, sorry to dox him. But yeah, this is brutal. Jason's definitely trying to come up with any kind of winning pathway. You laid out a few of the reasons why those are so elusive to him. It's going to be very tough for him to figure that out here. And really, I just can't really look at any move that he's made and say that I disagree with anything. And I wonder what he's going for here, just playing the I.
He's probably going for oversea on the left, Aranos on top. The problem,
Yeah, Aranos, Roseate, a few
I
things
don't know
like
if he's going
that.
to score enough if he bingos. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think pretty simple. I mean, from Michael's POV, he could probably just play nth right now and just end things. So yeah.
Look at Jason is now turning the tile over.
Jason with the little troll
that's
action.
something I feel like me or Josh would do. There's a bunch of us who are sometimes I know Josh started a trend of like sometimes not looking at tiles at all, like just leaving them face down until the opponent moves in these kind of situations, which is actually kind of not a bad idea. So you don't give away a tell to your opponent.
Tells, I mean, that's an interesting thing. I mean, that's something that I made a video recently about opening with opening plays like Pretzel, and something I didn't include in that video that I feel like maybe I should have is like, if you really want to be sneaky, you could play a crazy opening word like Pretzel in the dangerous spot, and then just before you hit your clock, just look at your opponent's response and just see, like, are their eyes widening because they have a giant response, or are they upset because they can't do anything about the spot? It's a little bit, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I don't know if I like doing that in my Scrabble games, but I feel like it's definitely worth a mention. So, all right, oversea, there we go. Some consolation for Jason.
Enough, right? Oh, the bag is the bag empty?
It's not. So. There's one tile. There's an O in the bag. That's coming here.
Okay, it's definitely not enough then.
Yeah. So
that's okay. That's probably why Michael played HM instead of NTH, was to not empty the bag, which is actually a very smart play.
Oh yeah, makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Good play. I didn't realize that, but that's definitely a savvy play on Michael's part. To use up that spot, block up there, and make sure that he'll have one more turn. And yeah, he's definitely totally fine here. He'll play, I think probably his best play is something like Nocturne through this O, just to shed as much junk as he can. But he can basically play any valid word, and he'll be just fine.
Or I think even an invalid word would probably win at this lead, given the situation.
Yeah, true. So yeah, what does he have? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That means 18 points are coming to Jason.
Not getting 28. There's no way.
That means he needs to score 28 points with his O. Can anybody find a good way to score 28 points with your O? Probably Oidola or something like that, right? Does that even do it?
No, that's only 24. I would still lose.
Idolao.
There you go, an FSO. So Michael needs to phony, and then Jason needs to get out with a phony outplay of Idolao and FSO, and that's the only way he can win this game.
There you go. So you're saying there's a chance, right? There you go.
Exactly. That was from what was that, Dumb and Dumber?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Dumb and Dumber.
Love that movie.
Nice. So Cornu is the play, not quite as good as Nocturne, but really no big deal for Michael. Jason is going to play his O somewhere, and that's going to do it for this game. So we'll just have to see where that last tile goes. Not sure if we aspire to do any interviews for this game. I think maybe the players are likely to want to get off to dinner as fast as they can here. I would be pretty hungry in their shoes, but we'll defer to our producer Josh and the players if they are interested to talk. Yeah, I think everybody it's the end of a long day, so maybe we'll pass up on the interviews for now and save our energy for tomorrow. So yeah, so Boa is the play that looked like the best play for Jason Mack, and another interesting game to end things off. Michael ends up on top despite a couple moves that could have gone either way there. Turtle and hip certainly gave us a lot to talk about.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think as our producer Josh just points out, Michael did point out to Jason there, I saw him put his index finger next to the E in turtle, so he was probably asking about that. And he did look a little frustrated to learn that it was indeed valid. But, if you're Michael here, you got to at least just, focus on the fact that you still won the game and try not to dwell on that too much as he goes into dinner and the rest of the day, because he wants to make sure that he has a as much of a positive mindset as possible going into tomorrow. It's easy to, even when you win games, when you're as good a player as Michael is, it's easy to be hard on yourself for mistakes and sort of aspire to always be perfect in all your wins. But it's important to just not focus on that too much, which again, like all these things, is easier said than done. But in any case, it was still an interesting game, well played to both of them. And I think the players are now probably, like we were saying, off to a well-deserved dinner break.
And the same could be said for the two of us, Mac, I think. So we can go off and get something to eat as well. Before we do, maybe the quickest standings check just to see where things stand. I'm not sure if we want to very, very quickly take a look and let everybody know where things are headed into tomorrow, if we can. Obviously already done plenty of plugging of liking and following the channel, so we'll spare you with that. Look at that. So John Shrieve, after 11 games, we do know that Jason is going to have dropped his last game, moving down to 7-4. But it does seem like a couple results still pending. That Jackson Smiley final game is going to loom large. If Jackson doesn't win his final round of the day, John is going to be in commanding position tomorrow, Mac.
2 games and a lot of spread, I might add, too. I mean, I guess, well, we don't know if Seth won either, because Seth could be at 7.5 if he won, or unless, I don't think Jackson was, I think Jackson was playing David and Seth was playing, Maddie? I'm not positive about that, though. But in any case, yeah, well, no matter what, John is going to be in command. He's going to be up at least a game and some spread. But certainly if you're John, you're, feelings aside, you're definitely rooting for Jackson and Seth to lose, because having a 2-game and spread lead on the field is a pretty good position to be in.
Yeah, totally agreed. So we'll obviously, tomorrow we'll have much more context about where things stand. If we want to give a quick update too on the players are competing, there you go. Wow, I think the surprise of the tournament so far has to be the performance of Neil Gann at 9-2. Look at that rating gain from 1481 to 1657. And he played an absolutely magnificent game on stream this morning, showcasing really, really high level tactics and board, positional understanding. So I was very, very impressed by the play we saw from Neil. No surprise to see Matthew up there. Adam, Logan, nobody is surprised to see him in the hunt as well. So a lot of our familiar faces, and of course our beloved content creator, Josh Sokol, still in the mix. Maybe he can win 4 games and make a charge at it. I got to say, though, that the performance of Neil, Mac, is very, very impressive here.
Absolutely. And I mean, not only in general, but just in that strong a field. I mean, you've got multiple former national and world champions and Matthew, Adam, Logan, Josh Sokol, so many other top players. That is extraordinarily impressive. And I'm almost surprised, I have to say, that he hasn't even gained more rating than that, given just how well he's doing. And he's presumably been playing against these 18, 19, even 2,000 rated players. I'm not an expert on the math of it. And I do wonder if that might even be underestimating based on acceleration and feedback points. I know Neil is I think he's been playing for a while, but he's fairly new to tournaments as far as I know. So yeah, I have a feeling that number is, and especially if he keeps performing this well tomorrow, is going to go way up. And we could easily see him jump into the 17, maybe even 1800, which would be absolutely amazing and quite well deserved.
Yeah, an astonishing jump potentially in the offing with a good day for him tomorrow. So that's where things stand. With that, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m., just like today, sharp, for the final 4 games of the main event here. I think my co-commentator there is going to be Charles Reinke returning. So just want to say a huge thank you to you, Mac, for joining me for these 4 games this afternoon. It was a ton of fun. Any parting thoughts before we sign off for the day?
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered everything in a lot of detail. So thanks once again to you, Will, for having me on, as well as to Josh. It was a ton of fun. I always love doing this live commentary. I also love playing, and I'll hopefully be doing a lot more of that too this summer. But it's if I'm not going to play, it's always almost as fun to do this, especially with lots of other great commentators and content creators like all of you guys. So thanks again for having me on. Thanks to everybody who watched, for tuning in and giving us some great suggestions in chat always, whether it's on this or my own videos I post. Always love seeing the engagement of all of the viewers and all of the kind comments. So thank you all so much for watching and all your support of this channel and Scrabble in general. And yeah, hope you, I won't be here unfortunately tomorrow for the commentary, but hopefully I know you guys will be in great hands with Will and Charles, and hopefully you guys will get some more good games as we wrap it up.
Couldn't have said it better myself. With that, we're going to go get some food and wind it down from day 2 from the Montreal Scrabblefest 2024, brought to you by Let's Play Scrabble and WGPO. And we'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, for the final 4 games. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.